Chapter 637. Countless were shocked to their cores hearing Yi Futian's voice. Isn't Yi Futian doing too much with his words? Is Gong Sun Yi really no match for him? Countless were shocked to their cores hearing Yi Futian's voice. Isn't Yi Futian doing too much with his words? Is Gong Sun Yi really no match for him? Gong Sun Yi stood on top of the alchemy pillar, looking at Yi Futian with cold eyes. Yi Futian walked towards him, and each step seemed to carry immense pressure, as if Gong Sun Yi was being invaded by some kind of mental powers. He was a grade 1 noble while Yi Futian's aura suggested that he was at most a grade 3. It was totally unexpected that Yi Futian would make the first move to attack him using spiritual will powers. It was deemed an insult like no other. However, when Gong Sun Yi felt the invading will coming at him, he was shocked to find himself almost paralyzed. An illusion was welling up in his mind, as if his body was being locked in place by some intense power, rendering him totally immobile. Gong Sun Yi had no way of moving his body, and even his blood seemed to stop flowing, rendering everything in him still. Boom! Violent flames burst forth all of a sudden. Gong Sun Yi's will seemed to have taken the form of some kind of fire god, attempting to burn everything in its path and dispel the power controlling him. Yi Futian extended his hand. Tremendously fearsome will and spells descended at the same time. He recalled from one of Sage Daozong's lectures that noble will could have been seen as some kind of area of effect power. The top-class genius cultivators were capable of creating their own areas of will by dissolving different types of area of effect abilities, which enabled them to conjure super powerful spells. Yi Futian had been capable of creating several types of abilities within the 3 years of training in the Holy Ji Palace. When he advanced to grade 3 noble plane, his areas of will became even more powerful, so much so that no conventional grade 1 noble wouldn't have been able to resist his powers. Gong Sun Yi was incredibly well known, but that was due only to his prowess as an armorer. Alchemy City placed incredible emphasis in the armorer's art, and talented armorers enjoyed prestige like no other. While there was no doubt that he was a magnificent armorer of the highest order, his martial arts competency was nowhere near that of his capacity as an armorer. At the very least, when compared to Di Gang, Gong Sun Yi was way behind, so much so that he was hardly on the same level as Di Gang in martial arts. Gong Sun Yi's exceptional talents at the armorer's arts made him incredibly arrogant and insolent, yet he failed to understand that the city lord of Alchemy City, Wuxia, did not get where he was, being ranked 8th on Baron Sky ranking, due to his proficiency as an armorer. Wuxia was also an exceptional martial artist. If he had simply devoted all his time to hone his armorer's skills and let his mastery at martial arts rust, he would have never been able to get where he was. Wuxia would have simply been made a servant, crafting ritual implements for others. Due to having too much renown as an armorer, and everyone around him hailing him as some sort of superior being, Gong Sun Yi failed to realize his lacking competency in the martial arts. Freeze! Yi Futian uttered. Gong Sun Yi felt everything around him go still in an instant. Even the flow of spiritual qi and his own thoughts threatened to cease moving altogether. The melding of powers was simply too strong. As the will and spell became one and resonated with each other, Gong Sun Yi burst his most powerful aura out, attempting to touch that terrifying power holding him in place. The wings behind him flapped and he took to the air. However, he soon saw a massive number of vines, enough to block out the sky, coming at him. Yi Futian turned his eyes at Di Gang. The air felt stiff once again. Rumors had it that something like that actually happened. However, seeing was believing, and the scene of Yi Futian provoking Di Gang still sent shivers down many spines. Is that unparalleled genius from the Holy Ji place really trying to pick fights with the top figure of the younger generation in the southwestern region of Baron State? Right after he killed Gong Sun Yi, the champion on alchemy rank? Di Gang was not Gong Sun Yi. He was no armorer and he was a fighter through and through. His proficiency in the martial arts were leagues above Gong Sun Yi's. It was said that his prowess was proven in the Emperor family residence that day. When Di Gang made his move, there was simply no one who was able to stand in his way. Di Gang looked at Yi Futian as he took steps forward, making for the alchemy pillar area. He said, "Well then, let me have a look personally at what the mighty ones of the Holy Ji Palace are capable of." Everyone who invaded the Emperor family residence that day fought using ritual implements. That is hardly considered a true fight. Let us go about it as how it should be done then, right now. Is D Gang trying to fight every single person from the Holy Ji Palace? Many were breathing hard. D Gang was indeed the number one in Alchemy City. He remained just as overbearing even after witnessing what Yi Futian was capable of. Huang Zhouge and all the others looked rather distressed. They were able to tell back in that day that D Gang was indeed powerful. But fighting all of them all at once, all on his own? Is he trying to make a joke here? Chapter 638. Yi Futian turned his eyes at D Gang, who was taking his steps in the air, and smiled. You are welcome to test yourself against the students of the Holy Ji Palace, but you alone are not qualified to fight all of us at once. If you want a war, you need to bring your people with you. Yi Futian turned his eyes at D Gang, who was taking his steps in the air, and smiled. You are welcome to test yourself against the students of the Holy Ji Palace, but you alone are not qualified to fight all of us at once. If you want a war, you need to bring your people with you. D Gang did not mind at all. He actually went on to look at everyone below and said, if any proud sons and daughters of Alchemy City wish to test themselves against the students of the Holy Ji Palace, feel free to join the fray. I wish to do so. A voice was heard and a figure leaped onto the platform. It was Li Futu. Many were dumbfounded. Li Futu of the Fire Emperor Palace, whose reputation was slightly inferior to D Gang's yet was nonetheless someone of exceptional caliber. He was said to have lost in the gang fight in the Alchemy Casino. Was he trying to fight once again here? I'm not here to fight to the death. I want only to test my skills, Li Futu said. He apparently felt something was lacking in the fight back then and had been feeling rather displeased. As such, he walked into the alchemy pillar area and stood in the air, wanting to test himself yet again. I too wished to do so. Another figure walked out. It was Qi Lian. He crafted a heavy sword in the alchemy conference and ranked 4th on alchemy rank. He was very powerful. Many mighty ones from some of the renowned clans of Alchemy City walked into the alchemy pillar area, gathering around D Gang, eager to try their hand. Well, in that case, we too shall see what the mighty ones of the Alchemy City regions of the Barren State are made of. Yi Futian turned his head back toward his people and saw one figure after another step up. The air above the vast ground surrounded by 8 alchemy pillars saw the gathering of multiple geniuses and mighty ones of incredible prowess. It was truly a magnificent sight to behold. This fight will definitely be more spectacular than the last. No one had expected to be able to witness a showdown like this after the alchemy conference. D Gang, Li Futu, Qi Lian, and the others joined the fray as representatives of the Alchemy City regions, while Yi Futian and his people represented the mighty ones of the Holy Ji Palace. It was the clash of titans between the best of geniuses, and the fight was seen to carry great significance. Interesting. Suke smirked. Not only had he been able to get several ritual implements on this trip to Alchemy City, but he felt great that he was also able to see for himself what the top figures of Alchemy City had to offer. He planned to focus on making his way up the law rank after returning to the Holy Ji Palace. When he became a grade 1 noble, he would then focus on breaking into sage planes. The sky would be the limit once he became a sage. Huang Zhouge looked just as excited. He chose not to study in the Holy Ji Palace despite having participated in the palace's examinations, as his sole objective back then was to fight top-notch figures. He was equally as excited to be able to do the same again this day. Everyone from both sides took their own corners and unleashed their auras, enabling everyone to make clear of the planes of one another. One figure after another was seen flashing about, making their way at each other. Li Futu stepped out. A proud figure was seen coming at him. It was none other than Huang Zhouge. Qi Lian stepped out, and the one who chose to fight him was Su Quebec. All the others selected their own opponents. Dazzling figures filled the air above the alchemy pillars as they went fighting each other. D Gang didn't move. Many turned their eyes at D Gang. He remained standing proud in the air, scanning the battlefield but not fighting himself. Yi Futian stood in the air in silence without moving as well. Yi Futian was able to connect the minds of everyone in that battle back in Alchemy Casino using music, resonating them with one another. He isn't doing something like that today, but simply let everyone fight their own battles. It is the same with D Gang's side. No matrices are used to boost anyone. It seems like all they want is to fight each other as they are, without using amplification tools of any kind. Furthermore, both Di Gang and Yi Futian seemed to have isolated themselves from the fray. The battles there looked as if they had nothing to do with them. Many sported funny looks. Both of them seemed to have immense pride. The battles raged about in the area of the platform. Li Futu seemed to have been possessed by the vermilion bird, and Huang Zhouge looked like a descendant of Ren Huang. Both figures clashed and the space trembled violently in response. Qi Lian was a swordsman, and a golden dazzling greatsword seemed to have appeared between his hands. It went swinging about in the air in an attempt to cut everything in its way. However, Su Ke moved about like a mirage, clad in murderous intent, boasting incredible power. Yu Shang, Zui Qianqiu, Yi Wuchen, Phoenix, and some others found their own opponents, and each of their fights looked earth-shattering. It was especially so in the fight between Yu Shang and Di Zhou. While Di Zhou was formidable, he was being slaughtered by Yu Shang and sent flying all over the place. Di Zhou spat up blood from his mouth and he looked pale. Despite the predicament with his little brother, Di Gang did not intervene. He simply observed everything taking place in silence. The Holy Ji Palace is the sacred ground of the barren state, and everyone who emerged from there is indeed the best the barren state has to offer. Many mumbled to themselves as they watched the battles taking place. While the students of the Holy Ji Palace suffered a disadvantage in playing, they seemed to have gained the upper hand in the battle. There was no doubt that Huang Zhouge was incredibly powerful. He fought Li Futu as a grade 2 noble. He was the first runner-up in the law battle 3 years ago. His tremendous capacity for combat seemed to once again speak volume of Yi Futian's powers. As the battles raged on, the ones at the side of Alchemy City began to see more and more losses, and it seemed like they were barely holding on. Di Gang, who had been standing in the air watching, swooped down on the battlefield. Blinding light was seen bursting from his body as he was clad in golden raven armor, and a sun hung above him. The divine bird cried around the sun as it looked incredibly breathtaking. At that moment, Di Gang's body became covered in overpowering might. Beams of scorching hot sunlight shot out, covering the heavens and bringing incredible pressure to bear down on everyone. The golden raven armor. Many turned to look at Di Gang. His golden raven armor looked incredibly regal and proud. That was a terrifying battle tactic Di Gang had invented using his own life spirits. It was a form of limitless might and looked invincible. Rumor had it that in order to train and gain such battle form, he went searching for the golden raven at the edge of the demon world. The number 1 figure in Alchemy City was indeed a peerless one. Everyone retreat, Di Gang said with an overbearing voice. Golden fiery beams shot out from his body as soon as he finished giving the order, heading for Huang Zhouge and the rest of the Holy Ji Palace students. Everyone was seen putting up a defense against the move. Many who heard Di Gang scattered. Li Futu frowned and thought of continuing his fight with Huang Zhouge. But Di Gang had no plans of letting him continue his fight. Di Gang descended on his opponents like a divine bird. He raised his hand and went for Huang Zhouge right away. At that very moment, Huang Zhouge felt as if he was facing a true divine bird of the sun. The tremendous divine bird loomed over him, and it looked far more powerful than Li Futu's vermilion bird. The golden fiery claws capable of tearing everything in their path came for Huang Zhouge. He retreated in a hurry but quickly saw the shadow of a divine bird pursuing him with lethal intention. Huang Zhouge saw no choice but to fight head-on. He brought his Renhuang sword to bear, attempting to cut the bird into two. However, the shadow of the divine bird in front of him seemed to be unbelievably solid. The Renhuang sword hit hard on the bird, and Huang Zhouge was quickly sent flying from the resulting shock. Boom! With a flap of its wings, Di Gang's body vanished. He went into another direction, which was where Phoenix was. An incredibly huge golden bird of the sun swooped down with its wings. Holy lights flashed down like blades, and every defense that Phoenix put up was completely shattered. With a loud rumble, Phoenix, who was a grade 3 noble, was pierced by some kind of attack and spit up blood. Di Gang vanished once again after landing the hit. Yu Shang, Yi Wuchen, Zhongli and others were attacked one after another, and they were either cornered or injured. The unbelievably fast movements of Di Gang made it seem almost impossible to catch him. What incredible power! Many were stunned at the sight. D Gang was indeed the number one in all of the southwestern region of the Barren State. D Gang was so powerful that anything he pulled seemed to be a testament to his invincibility. Many were boiling with excitement. While many mighty ones from the Alchemy City regions were being crushed by the Holy Ji Palace students, D Gang proved adequate to even the score. Everyone came to understand why D Gang chose to have all of the students of the Holy Ji Palace fight. While he did allow the mighty ones from Alchemy City to fight alongside him, he had never once thought of relying on any one of them. He had been planning to overwhelm everyone from the Holy Ji Palace right from the start, proving himself to be the one befitting the title of number one in Alchemy City. It was also, at the same time, the price he intended to make Yi Futian and the others pay for invading the Emperor family residence. Everyone from Alchemy City felt excitement like no other. Their number one mighty one was so overbearing that no one was able to stand in his way. "Di Kai, your son is indeed something," Yan Jun said. While his son Li Futu was also a top-notch genius, he had to admit after seeing D Gang in action, that D Gang was way more powerful than Li Futu. "I've said it before. D Gang will become a saint someday. In the ranks of the Holy Ji Palace, only Bai Luli would be able to stand against him. Even if the one ranked first on the law rank were here, D Gang would run over him all the same. All those students here are no match for him," D Kai said proudly. It was only natural for him to do so, having one such excellent heir to succeed him. He glanced at Bai Luli, who was watching the battles, thinking that when D Gang became a sage, there would be a day when D Gang would clash with him, who ranked 10th on Barren Sky ranking. This would decide who was the superior one among them. Yu Qi was observing the battlefield as well. D Gang's talents were indeed matchless in Alchemy City, and he would be able to achieve great things in the future. D Kai was also feeling ambitious right then, having intentions of taking his place. Yi Futian had demonstrated his genius-level talents when he ran over Gong Sun Yi, but how will he fare against D Gang? At the moment, Yi Futian burst forth with incredibly dazzling light as well. The wings of the rock spread wide and bright. He then addressed the battlefield. "All of you retreat and leave it to me." He flashed and disappeared from where he stood as soon as he was done talking, appearing right before a mighty one from Alchemy City the very next moment. That mighty one felt Yi Futian's sharply exploding aura of intense might, but in the very next second, he was rendered completely stiff and unable to move. Boom! The wings swept and the body of that mighty one was sent flying, swatted away by the huge rock down to the ground below. Yi Futian's body disappeared yet again and appeared where Di Zhou was. Di Zhou intended to back away seeing Yi Futian coming, but Yi Futian's speed was so fast that he zipped by in a dazzling arc, and with a flap of the golden wings a deafening shriek was heard. Blood appeared on Di Zhou's body as he hit an alchemy pillar hard. Many others were only able to see the rock zipping through the air afterward before one figure after another dropped like flies. The hearts of many were shocked at the scene, as all of the mighty ones from Alchemy City looked helpless before Yi Futian. He seemed to be making a statement that what D Gang had just pulled he was able to do the same. Seems like the head of the Emperor family jumped to conclusions a little too soon. That boy is a grade 3 noble, yet he is able to do what D Gang just did. Chuji smirked sheepishly as she elaborated. D Kai stared at the battlefield in all seriousness and said, "D Gang will end his rampage right here." Chapter 639. All of the Holy Ji Palace students on the battlefield, even Huang Zhouge, retreated. They had all experienced D Gang's powers firsthand, and he was indeed more powerful than they were. He was truly the genius of the highest order in the Alchemy City regions. His reputation preceded him and he had what it took to back his immense reputation. His unbelievably exceptional talents for combat made it so that even those ranked high on the law rank of the Holy Ji Palace would find him difficult to deal with. All of the Holy Ji Palace students on the battlefield, even Huang Zhouge, retreated. They had all experienced D Gang's powers firsthand, and he was indeed more powerful than they were. He was truly the genius of the highest order in the Alchemy City regions. His reputation preceded him and he had what it took to back his immense reputation. His unbelievably exceptional talents for combat made it so that even those ranked high on the law rank of the Holy Ji Palace would find him difficult to deal with. Di Gang proved himself to be the #1 genius in all of the southwestern regions of the Barren State. While rumor had it that the prestige of both Li Futu and Gong Sun Yi were almost equal to his, the truth was that Di Gang's combat ability was several orders of magnitude higher than either of them. Di Gang stood proudly in the air, basking in the light of the golden raven and watching Yi Futian move, who was then attacking Qi Lian. Qi Lian ranked 4th in the alchemy conference. His combat ability was immensely high, and there was no way Yi Futian would be able to easily overpower him. The fire and golden light around Qi Lian burst in a crazed manner, and it seemed as if his body was being turned into a large painting. It was as if countless runes were coalescing into a matrix of sorts, forging a terrifying giant sword. Sword aura from all around him whooshed, and the golden light and fire resonated with the aura. The shadow of the rock descended upon Qi Lian, and at that very split second, the space around him felt frozen. He then felt a very strong oppressive pressure bearing down on him, freezing the space around him. Boom, boom, boom. Incredibly terrifying golden fires exploded in the air, in an attempt to destroy that power that seemed to be placing everything around him under lockdown. However, he still felt incredibly heavy and cold, as if all forces around him made it a point to pin him down, preventing him from moving. Sharp, high-pitched ringing noises were heard, and appalling light burst from the giant sword, tearing everything around it apart. Go, Qi Lian uttered a single word with a cold voice. The giant sword, under his control, went about tearing apart everything in its path, making its way to the rock. Boom! The golden mirage was unbelievably quick as it zipped past the giant sword. At that second, the giant sword suddenly blew up into countless pieces of small rune swords, bursting with incredibly sharp sword will, attempting to tear apart the space. Despite his frightening speed, Yi Futian was unable to evade the attack. The countless rune swords went for him, yet clanging sharp noises were heard soon after. There seemed to be an absolute defense field with Yi Futian at its center. The rune swords zipped past the starlight, yet they were still unable to break his defenses. The rock soon descended upon Qi Lian. Qi Lian shouted. Using his body as the container, countless runes flashed about and spread all around. It was a dazzling scene to behold, like his body had been turned into a giant sword of alchemy. However, Yi Futian, clad in the shadow of the rock, remained unfazed as he attacked. The blow landed directly onto Qi Lian's body, and it seemed as if the attack hit the giant sword squarely as well. Intense heavy power burst suddenly as the giant sword blasted countless shimmering runes, trying to defend against the attack in a crazed manner. Kaboom! Lightning of incomparable magnitude burst, like the god of thunder himself was hammering on the giant sword in a rage. Cracking noises sounded out, and cracks began to form on the giant sword. The giant weapon was soon torn apart as dazzling lights flashed. Qi Lian's body was sent flying by the move. He spat out blood in the air and his face looked as pale as paper. Even Qi Lian, a grade 1 noble, was utterly incapable of defending against the attack. The hearts of many shuddered. While it was easy to say that what happened between Gong Sun Yi and Yi Futian was simply due to everyone having overestimated what Gong Sun Yi was capable of, what happened right there and then was a testament of Yi Futian's unparalleled capacity ability, which was deemed to be at the pinnacle of noble plane. There was no one that Yi Futian was unable to simply sweat aside, other than Di Gang. That fellow. Su Ke watched Yi Futian with a startled look. He fought with Qi Lian before and knew well of Qi Lian's prowess. He was incapable to defend against Qi Lian's attack before, and that alone spoke volume of Yi Futian's current prowess. Not having fought for 2 whole years, Yi Futian's rank on the law rank of the Holy Ji Palace remained at 10th place. However, everyone knew that he should have advanced a long time ago. Speculating Yi Futian's prowess happened very often in the Holy Ji Palace. That one battle enabled them to see it for themselves personally. The number genius of Alchemy City, Di Gang, stood before Yi Futian. You all back off, Di Gang addressed everyone who was being attacked by Yi Futian. Everyone retreated as told. Even Li Futu did so without hesitation. He knew if Yi Futian were to attack him, there was no way he would come out on top. That grade 3 noble from the Holy Ji Palace now felt like a demon god of some kind. Everyone else who had fought before retreated, with only 2 people left within the alchemy pillar area, Di Gang and Yi Futian. Both of them stared at each other. Di Gang was basking in the light of the golden raven, while Yi Futian was clad with the rock. Those two were deemed kings among birds. The upcoming battle was one that would reveal Yi Futian using his full power, and how long he would last facing off against someone like Di Gang. Di Gang locked gazes with Yi Futian as he said, "You are a grade 3 noble, and as such it has not been my place to bully you. But you invaded the Emperor family residence and overpowered the Emperor family with numbers. As such, I see no other way than to fight you personally. However, I will only injure you very badly in this fight, as penance for those you have injured that day. When you reach a higher plane in the future, I welcome a challenge from you again." Di Gang spoke with an incredibly prideful tone. Despite the immense talents like none other and combat ability second to none, Di Gang still deemed Yi Futian no match for him. Di Gang was at the pinnacle of the noble plane, and he was literally steps away from becoming a sage. His talents surpassed all others, and both his offensive and defensive capacities were mastered at uncommon heights. His life spirit was immensely powerful, and he reigned supreme in martial arts at the noble level. Besides Yi Futian, there was hardly anyone in the noble plane who was able to truly face him and come out on top in all of the barren state. It was not a statement made in arrogance but in confidence. He had thought for a long time if Bai Luli was of the same plane as him, there would have been an epic battle between two nobles at the pinnacle of their training. There have been many who like you before, arrogant like none other. Be it Bai Zhe in the law battle 3 years ago, or Yanjiu who is here today, or anyone you can think of, they all behaved in such ways. The end result of their arrogance they know well themselves, Yi Futian said plainly, embarrassing Yanjiu who was among the crowd. Yi Futian obviously targeted him for humiliation, yet Bai Luli looked composed and there was little to be found from his expression. Yi Futian was simply telling the truth. Bai Zhe's prowess was far behind that of Yi Futian, and Bai Luli saw no need to deny that. He made it a point to train Bai Zhe harder when he returned to the Holy Ji Palace. As for you being of a higher plane than I am, there is no need to fret about that. If we were of the same plane, you would have no business being here. Yi Futian added plainly, those who were of the same plane as I never stood a chance. They were nothing to me, and they had no right to even speak to me. Well, everyone within earshot was rendered speechless by Yi Futian's words. Di Gang was incredibly arrogant as he had what it took to back his claim. However, Yi Futian's response proved even more insolent. He had no one of the same plane to fight against, as there was simply no one of the same plane who stood a chance against him. What he meant was he was invincible compared to everyone on the same plane in the barren state. No one of the same plane had the right to even think about lifting a finger against him. These were probably the most insolent words a martial arts cultivator could come up with. You brag without shame. Di Kai of the Emperor family said coldly, I have never seen one of the younger generation as insolent as you are. He became a law battle champion to enter the Holy Ji Palace as a grade 9 noble, and he came to sweep everyone aside in the Alchemy City regions as a grade 3 noble. All who he fought and defeated were people of a higher plane. As he put it himself, no one on the same plane as him stands a chance against him. Chu Ji elaborated with a smirk, finding the young man to be rather amusing. Humph, Di Kai snorted. He will learn his lesson after this battle. Two distinctly terrifying auras permeated the battlefield. Di Gang said nothing else. There was no need for more words. If Yi Futian was behaving in such a confident manner, Di Gang had to do nothing else but to overpower him with sheer force. Terrifying martial arts will burst out. Di Gang was standing very far away from Yi Futian. However, when Di Gang lashed out with a clawing attack, the gold raven appeared, blocking out the sky and went straight for Yi Futian with its fiery golden claws. Absolute territory. Starlight circled around Yi Futian as it turned into a space of absolute territory. When the golden raven shadow came tearing at him, sharp, screeching noises were heard. The starlight around Yi Futian seemed utterly impenetrable. Good defense. I specialize in martial arts, and I have invented the offensive and defensive techniques of the golden raven armor. Are you ready? Di Gang stepped forward, flashing like the golden raven at a frightening speed, coming straight for Yi Futian. Spell sky freezing, Yi Futian said. Powerful areas of will permeated the space around him, seemingly freezing everything around it. It was a power that came with intense pressure, as even D Gang's speed seemed to have been considerably slowed. D Gang had a strange look as he came to feel such power firsthand. He was surprised to find it nearly impossible to tell what kind of elements were used to create such a fusion power. That meant that what Yi Futian pulled surpassed his current plane limit, and gave birth to some completely new area of effect powers. It was a talent like no other indeed. However, that trick still proved inadequate. Boom! Golden fiery wings spread and devastating power of flames burst in the air. An incredibly huge golden raven appeared and blocked out the sky. It seemed as if the space itself was being assailed by a pair of endless golden fiery wings, cutting the frozen space apart with a pair of wings like blades capable of cutting anything in its path. As D Gang continued to come at Yi Futian, incredible pressure soon bore down. D Gang's imposing figure soon descended upon Yi Futian, and the golden raven covering his body lashed out with a claw of unparalleled sharpness, bashing hard into Yi Futian's absolute territory. Tremendously terrifying starlight orbited around Yi Futian, yet D Gang's attack seemed to have tremendous penetration power. The golden flame seeped into his defenses, flaring about in the screen of starlight. Cracking noises were heard as the defensive power of the absolute territory shattered. The golden raven cried as it continued to tear at everything before it, heading straight for Yi Futian. Golden vines were seen bursting out, heading for the golden raven. The attack was, however, quickly torn apart, and Yi Futian backed away like a bolt of lightning. Despite Yi Futian being a genius like no other, the difference in plane still makes it so that it is impossible for him to defend against D Gang's attacks. Many who were watching the fight noted to themselves, D Gang's offensive powers were matchless among all nobles in Alchemy City, and he was second to none even when compared to all the nobles found in the barren state. Chapter 640. D Gang stood proudly in the sky, clad head to toe in golden armor. A terrifying golden raven was by his side. This was the golden raven armor, which was incomparable when it came to offensive and defensive capabilities. Furthermore, when attacking, the armor could penetrate and tear through anything. As such, D Gang could even rip through Yi Futian's constitution of stars. D Gang stood proudly in the sky, clad head to toe in golden armor. A terrifying golden raven was by his side. This was the golden raven armor, which was incomparable when it came to offensive and defensive capabilities. Furthermore, when attacking, the armor could penetrate and tear through anything. As such, D Gang could even rip through Yi Futian's constitution of stars. D Gang continued moving forward. Right then, a surge of power exploded from Yi Futian, before streaks of light passed through him and turned into 4 dazzling rays that shot up through his body. The energy surrounding his body then began to increase rapidly, becoming scarier than before. This is one of Sage Dojan's body refining formulas. He's awakening his body's potential, Yin Jun explained, his eyes on Yi Futian. Sage Dojan was 7th in the Barren Sky ranking and the top body refinement practitioner in the Barren State. Yi Futian and Yu Sheng were his disciples. With a shout, 4 streaks of bright light shot out from Yi Futian's body. The Flirting Star, Ruinous Star, Finance Star, and Gloomy Star acupoints were all activated at the same time. Instantly, the will energy in the surroundings grew stronger still. In Yi Futian's 3 years at the Holy Ji Palace, he had managed to integrate the power of many new areas of will. Those areas of will were created through a combination of martial arts and sorcery wills. When he released the limits of his body by activating 4 of the 7-star acupoints, the strength of his will had increased as well. Not only that, but Yi Futian carried immensely powerful energy within his core. His arms and legs contained explosive power too. He seemed ready to release all that energy in his body and battle it out. D Gang glanced over at Yi Futian coolly. Expressionless, he stepped out in a bright flash of gold. Sky freezing technique, absolute territory, Yi Futian uttered, and instantly, the atmosphere in the vast area became illusory and spiritual qi swirled about violently. The entire battlefield seemed to be filled with the power of Yi Futian's will. It weighed down on everyone, and it seemed as though the sky itself would congeal. Split, D Gang spat coldly. As a peak noble, his willpower was immense. A word from him sent a gigantic golden raven tearing through the sky, covering the entire battlefield. Its boundless flaming wings tore apart everything in the battlefield, ripping the energy to shreds. The golden raven dove towards Yi Futian in an attack. Yi Futian may have possessed terrifying noble intent, but Di Gang was not affected too greatly by it. Yi Futian possessed the bulk of a dragon, the strength and agility of a divine ape, and the flexibility and grace of a rock. In the face of Di Gang's attack, lightning moved along Yi Futian's body, and with a crackle, an improved version of the fatal entanglement spell shot out towards his opponent. However, Di Gang tore through the spell and ripped it to shreds. With the pieces of vine dancing fluttering through the sky in the aftermath, it was evident that Di Gang was powerful. With a flutter of the rock spirit's wings on his back, Yi Futian stepped out towards Di Gang, his body containing power that was incomparable by its sheer amount. Then, he sent a fist flying in Di Gang's direction. With a roar, the power of the thunder god entered his punch, making it unbeatably powerful. He's actually going to clash head-on with Di Gang? The crowd wondered to themselves. Their hearts were beating fast at the sight. It seemed like Yi Futian was being overconfident. Yet, the energy rolling off him was terrifying indeed. It did not seem like the kind of energy that belonged to grade 3 noble. Even a noble at their peak would not be this impressive. Chu Ji from the Goddess Pavilion observed with a smile. He's created his own areas of will, crafted his own spells, combined martial arts and sorcery, and integrated the body refinement techniques he learned from Sage Dojan into his attacks. Looks like one more monstrously powerful individual with the likes of Bai Luli has emerged from the Holy Ji Palace. No wonder it's the best place to train in all of the Barren State. With her plane, it was natural that she would be able to intuitively see many things that were happening on the battlefield. The two men's attacks collided directly. The golden raven and the rock battled each other. A fiery golden light tore through and burned everything in its path, seemingly headed straight for Yi Futian. Similarly, the explosive rage of the thunder god had Di Gang surrounded by streaks of lightning, seeking to destroy him. Di Gang had the golden raven armor to protect himself. If it had been Gong Sun Yi who was Yi Futian's opponent this time, he would not have been able to withstand a single blow. With a thud, Yi Futian was sent stumbling back. Di Gang's arm vibrated from the blow as well. The light rolling off Di Gang's body neutralized Yi Futian's lightning and Di Gang disappeared once again into an attack on Yi Futian. The rock spirit's wings fluttered, and Yi Futian charged towards Di Gang with no intention of retreating at all. As he lifted his arm to attack, a dazzling light emerged. With a crash, the sky rumbled, and Yi Futian was pushed back by Di Gang's attack. This time, Di Gang did not stop, but continued in his attack. He was going to see for himself just how long Yi Futian could sustain this battle with that body of his. The crowd looked towards the battlefield to see two bright streaks of light continuously clash with each other. Each clash made the sky rumble and the light grow brighter. Being forced back again and again by Di Gang's attacks, Yi Futian's blood was rushing wildly through his body, with cracking sounds appearing from within. But his impressive physical state allowed him to endure attacks of this frightening level and continue battling. Yi Futian's actually able to fight against Di Gang to this extent, exclaimed many people in the crowd in admiration. Just then Di Gang paused his attack. His wings fluttered, keeping him in the sky. Staring at Yi Futian, who was a distance away, Di Gang spoke. It's indeed impressive that you've been able to endure the attacks from my golden raven armor. You have good reason to be so irreverent. However, you're still far from my level. At his words, many golden ravens appeared on Di Gang. With a long cry, a humongous golden raven swooped down from the sky. Its sharp claws headed straight for Yi Futian. The rock behind Yi Futian cried out into the sky as well and spread its wings. However, the golden raven's gigantic claws latched onto the rock's wings, keeping Yi Futian trapped where he was. At the same time, the golden raven's wings came swooping down, cutting off the space to isolate Yi Futian. Di Gang came before Yi Futian in a flash, and launched a series of powerful attacks on him. Each blow contained destructive energy which rushed into Yi Futian's body, making him wheeze and feel as though his body was about to be torn apart by the attacks. 9-part attack! Di Gang shouted, and with the last blow, Yi Futian's body shook violently as though he had been pierced by the attacks, and he was sent stumbling back a good distance. Hua Jieyu and everyone else from the Holy Ji Palace watched the scene before them intently. The gazes of the powerful individuals spectating were equally sharp as well. They wondered if Di Gang had finally decided to get serious in the fight. This attack was probably enough to seriously injure Yi Futian. Yi Futian was almost pushed all the way back to the edge of the battlefield. A blindingly dazzling glow emanated through his body from the back, as if countless rays of light were shining through him. Yu Sheng's eyes glittered at the sight. He guessed that this was. Members of the Gongsun clan watched coldly. They wanted Yi Futian to be killed. Many gazes gathered on Yi Futian. His head bowed slightly and light swirled around him. After this attack, would he still be able to continue fighting? Thanks for the help, a low voice rang out, and Yi Futian lifted his head after he spoke. Taking a step forward, Yi Futian's body quivered violently. Instantly, countless rays of light shot through his body, bathing him in a dazzling glow. Then 5 streaks of light shot out from Yi Futian's body. The 5th of the 7-star acupoints, the Abundant Star acupoint, had been activated. Yi Futian had activated 5 acupoints in his body. Furthermore, the martial arts energy in his body was welling up as well, and an even stronger surge of energy flowed out, creating a frightening storm around him. He's broken through another plane in his martial arts. Many people looked towards Yi Futian in surprise. It was evident that Yi Futian was equally accomplished in martial arts and sorcery. The grade 3 noble aura he displayed just now had come from his sorcery skills. He was still a grade 4 noble in terms of martial arts, but he was only a step away from becoming a grade 3 noble in that aspect. Now, making use of Di Gang's power, Yi Futian had activated the 5th of the 7 stars acupoints, and the potential within his body to break through another plane in terms of martial arts. He had finally become a complete grade 3 noble. Yi Futian trained using the incomplete heavenly manual. At the Holy Ji Palace, he had borrowed the power of the relics to train his body, and after much grueling training, his body had become incredibly strong. Now that he had reached the limits of his body and was one step to breaking through to the next plane, how could he not make good use of facing an opponent like Di Gang? As such, he had the intention to borrow the other man's power to try and break through to the next martial arts plane. And he had succeeded. Di Gang stared at Yi Futian, and a cold glint flashed through his sharp eyes. He was a little angered now. Yi Futian had made use of their battle to break through to the next martial arts plane. This was no coincidence. Yi Futian had planned it from the start. You're welcome. Things will still end the same way though. Di Gang responded coldly. The gigantic golden raven seemed to take on a real form then. That was the ultimate form of the golden raven armor. Di Gang was not going to play around with Yi Futian anymore. A boundless fiery golden light emanated through the sky, with intense burning power. Of course, things will still end the same way, Yi Futian replied calmly. The two had very different ideas as to how this battle would turn out. Right then, a humongous rock let out a dazzling glow above Yi Futian and seemed to become real as well. It was like an actual divine bird descending upon the world. At the same time, a giant shadow figure appeared within the divine bird. That shadow figure was created by Yi Futian, and it seemed to integrate into the divine bird. However, the real Yi Futian remained where he was, shining with a dazzling glow. It's a Dharma body, someone announced. It's a Dojan body, a technique taught by Sage Dojan. The more prominent characters in the crowd knew more about what Yi Futian was doing. Indeed, this was a Dojan body. The most basic form of the Dojan body was crafted based on the life spirit. The stronger the resonance Yi Futian had with the world, the stronger his areas of will would become as well. Di Gang stared coldly at Yi Futian's Dojan body. Once again, the giant golden raven slashed towards him. Yi Futian's Dojan body, the rock, struck out with its sharp claws as well, clashing with the golden raven in the air. The next moment, Di Gang appeared before Yi Futian in a flash again, aiming for another attack. However, blinding bursts of starlight appeared around Yi Futian's Dojan body. The Yi Futian within the Dojan Bodu raised his arms and concentrated an endless amount of energy within. As Di Gang charged towards him, he punched both fists forward and attacked. Instantly, countless fist shadows appeared in the space and descended like shooting stars, tearing through everything before them. Many people stared at the sky in shock. In a starry dimension, fist shadows were turning into shooting stars that flew down towards Di Gang. This was an offensive technique that Yi Futian had previously learned. Now he had injected immensely powerful willpower into it, and activated the technique with his incomparably strong body. He would name this attack Comet. Chapter 641. Over the past 2 years, Yi Futian had learned all sorts of techniques. There was the white lustrous flame, the rage of the thunder god, the sky freezing technique, and absolute territory. All these were some of the techniques he had managed to learn. Over the past 2 years, Yi Futian had learned all sorts of techniques. There was the white lustrous flame, the rage of the thunder god, the sky freezing technique, and absolute territory. All these were some of the techniques he had managed to learn. Comparatively, Yi Futian was less knowledgeable about martial arts attacks. He had mainly learned the 9 heavenly attacks, which was the strongest martial arts offensive technique there was. He only needed to train and practice as much as he could in order to continuously integrate his own realizations into the technique and use it to its full potential. The Comet Punch was an offensive technique Yi Futian had developed to complement the body refining techniques he learnt from Sage Dozhan. The power of martial will was integrated into the attack. Within the starry sky, each fist shone like a blindingly dazzling comet and shot straight for the gigantic golden raven. The divine bird that Di Gang had summoned as part of his golden bird armor was incomparable in its offensive capabilities, and it continuously tore apart all the comets that rained down upon it. However, the fist seemed to pour down in an endless torrent. Di Gang raised an eyebrow slightly, then charged forward once more, seeming to turn into a bright streak of light. It didn't matter how powerful or peerless Yi Futian was. Any comet punch that got in his way would be all shattered. But then, a giant life spirit appeared from behind Yi Futian. It was the divine ape, which let out a long deafening roar. As Yi Futian took a step forward, so did the divine ape. The sky trembled with their movement, and in the next moment, Yi Futian lifted clenched fists and charged forward. The divine ape followed behind him, and instantly, the entire space seemed like it was about to be crushed and annihilated. The magnitude of the punch's power was shocking, seeming almost like an actual comet itself. Di Gang's golden raven armor charged forward to meet the attack, clashing directly with the comet punch. With a loud crash, Di Gang was sent flying backward. Di Gang soared through the air before stopping, his body slightly bowed. The entire sky was quiet at this very moment, for Di Gang had just been pushed back by Yi Futian. Countless eyes were on Yi Futian as he stood there, an impressive figure of immense capability. Their hearts thumped as they thought about how Yi Futian had forced Di Gang back. Di Gang was the top cultivator in all of Alchemy City. Even if Yi Futian had broken through to the next plane, he was only still a grade 3 noble. Yet he had still managed to force Di Gang back with his power. Di Kai's expression changed as well. He had initially thought that this match was going to simply be one where Yi Futian was crushed. It had not occurred to him at all that Yi Futian could be stronger than he expected. Yu Qi watched the battle quietly. After governing Alchemy City for many years, while he specialized in crafting, he also understood that martial arts were the foundation of everything. Now that a disciple from the Holy Ji Palace had arrived in Alchemy City in top form, even Di Gang would be shaken by their power. Di Gang lifted his head to look at Yi Futian. His body ramrod straight, he challenged haughtily, "You won't get a second chance from now on." As he spoke, a golden space appeared behind him. That was Di Gang's life spirit. Everyone understood the intentions behind Di Gang's speech. He was finally going to treat the battle seriously. Before this, it was obvious that he had been holding back. Di Gang had not expected to be pushed back by a mere grade 3 noble, forcing him to fight with everything he had. "You never had a chance right from the start," Yi Futian replied, equally determined. But those were just words, and anyone could brag easily. A dazzling sun chariot appeared within the golden space. In an instant, scorching, sharp energy filled the space. The chariot seemed to have been built with divine arms, with the sun shining behind it and the golden raven perched within the sun. "Go forth," Di Gang spat, and his life spirit let out a terrifying glow. A martial will illusion appeared within the space, and the alchemy pillars area seemed to be transformed into an ancient battlefield. The sun appeared high up in the sky, and the golden raven in the sun let out a long cry. The desolate battlefield contained the power to incinerate everything within it. At the same time, many chariots hurtled towards Yi Futian. Di Gang had created a destructive martial will illusion. As Yi Futian watched Di Gang, 3 streaks of light appeared. Instantly, the sun and moon hung high up in the sky along with the stars. The sun, moon, and stars had all appeared at the same time, in addition to Yi Futian's rock spirit. The sight of it all made the hearts of many thump excitedly. Just how many life spirits did this guy have? Li Futa's heart skipped a beat too. Yi Futian had released his Guqin spirit back when they were at the alchemy casino. Could it be that Yi Futian had a life spirit possessing all the elemental powers? Yi Futian saw the endless golden flames charge straight for him, filled with destructive scorching energy. The glow of the sun, moon, and stars behind him bled into each other, and it seemed like a special kind of willpower had been injected into them. Yi Futian instantly became the center of that light, where a pure white fire began to burn. That fire was the white lustrous flame. The pure white flames burned throughout the space, and when the golden fire rained down upon it, the white flames even tried to capture the golden flames as energy for itself in order to stop it from reaching Yi Futian. The chariots hurtled towards Yi Futian in a deadly attack. Lightning crackled around Yi Futian, destroying everything and attacking the chariots wildly, reducing them all to ash. But then, an ultimate chariot came rushing towards Yi Futian, emanating a destructive glow. Di Gang was driving the chariot, and behind him, the light of the sun and the golden raven covered Yi Futian and his Dozhan body. Streaks of golden light descended upon him, tearing through all of Yi Futian's defenses and heading straight for him. The wheels of the chariot seemed to be made out of an extremely sharp ritual implement, making the turning wheels seem like divine blades that tore up everything in its path. Where the chariot passed, there were no signs of life at all. With such frightening energy descending upon him, though the chariot had not reached Yi Futian yet, he could feel its terrifying destructive power. He dialed up his defenses to the max and threw out a series of punches. Each punch seemed to have a distinct spirit of its own. It resonated with the surroundings to create an incredibly powerful momentum, and in addition to the powerful martial will being released at the same time, the resulting energy created seemed almost like that of an emperor's. The divine ape began to shine with a dazzling glow, and its aura grew even more savage. As the chariot descended upon Yi Futian from the sky, the divine ape gathered the energy in the surroundings and with a deafening roar, comet punches were sent flying towards it. Comet-like fists filled the air and crashed straight into the approaching chariot. The chariot tore through those fists effortlessly. It was like many stars blowing apart at the same time, and a bright light shone out across the vast space as the chariot continued advancing. However, the fists continued to pelt the chariot in an endless stream before the real fist shadow appeared. The resulting collision brought about a destructive explosion of energy within the space, with a blinding light which was painful to watch. It was like the sun itself had exploded within the sky. Some nobles in the crowd were even stunned by the sight. They felt a sense of awe at the high-level battle. Even a grade 1 noble could clearly sense how powerful those two were. The chariot was destroyed, and Di Gang was pushed back once again. He lifted his head to look at Yi Futian. Before the battle, he had arrogantly assumed that no grade 3 noble would have been able to face off against him. This was not blind faith, but a sure knowledge of his own power. However, this disciple of the Holy Ji Palace was somewhat baffling to him. Di Gang was not the only one who was caught off guard. Everyone else had been as well. Even Su Ke and the others only found out how strong Yi Futian truly was today. Over the past 2 years he has broken through many of the relics at the Holy Ji Palace, but not once has he participated in a battle, commented Zhongli, who was also shocked. Everyone knows he has a special way about figuring out the relics. As such, many of the newcomers from his batch would go to him for advice, and he would always have a personal opinion to answer them with. It's unthinkable that he would be this strong already. He had been one of those who approached Yi Futian for advice. Phoenix had done the same as well. That was why they had come to the alchemy city with Yi Futian. For him to have such a variety of abilities, other than the body refinement techniques and the Dozhan body, he probably created them himself when he integrated his realizations of the relics into his own powers, Zui Qianqiu surmised. Everyone nodded in agreement. Yi Futian had probably created those new areas of will and spells on his own, along with that punching technique which also integrated his starry power. This level of talent was awe-inspiring. When it came to battle, Yi Futian was probably good enough to go up against Shimin Hanjiang, who was at the top of the law rank. The power Di Gang had shown so far was not inferior to Shimin Hanjiang's. Upon watching this battle, Xiang Jiqin, Bing Yi from the mortal world, Yin Jiao and everyone else from the Sword Saint Villa was speechless. They could not believe that Yi Futian had gotten this strong already. Di Gang seems to be having quite a hard time. Chu Ji chuckled from where she was among the important individuals on top of the stairs. Di Kai's expression turned slightly ugly, but he felt a rush as well. Yi Futian was stronger than he thought. The energy coming from Yi Futian now didn't feel like a grade 3 nobles at all. It was even more powerful than that of a top-grade noble. However, victory would still be Di Gang's. So this is what you're so confident about? Yi Futian asked Di Gang, staring at him. Everyone's gazes hardened at the dig. Di Gang lifted his head to glare at Yi Futian before he continued. I've said before that if you were of the same plane as me, you wouldn't even be good enough to be my opponent. Now it's my turn. Upon his words, Yi Futian stepped out impressively, standing tall and proud. As he moved, his Dozhan body moved along with his actual body towards Di Gang. With the release of a spell, the space seemed to freeze over, and an immense pressure bore down onto Di Gang. This energy was way stronger than the will he had experienced previously. The divine ape swung a fist forward. The sheer power of this punch sent shockwaves through the sky and headed straight for Di Gang. Di Gang was still clad in his armor. The golden raven appeared with a dazzling light and cried out to the heavens. Its sharp claws tore apart everything in its way as it charged forward. A strange state was instantly born. Within the barren, lifeless battlefield, a golden raven screeched amidst flames descending from the sky, and its claws glinted with the magnificent shine of a divine weapon that could rip through anything. The two attacks collided, and Di Gang was sent stumbling backward yet again. However, this time, Yi Futian felt cracks appear in the fists of his Dozhan body. At the same time, the bright light of the golden raven burned through the defenses of his absolute territory and came for him. Looking up, Yi Futian felt as if the illusion had grown even stronger. Sage intent, Yi Futian thought to himself. Di Gang was a top-grade noble, just one step away from becoming a sage. It was not surprising that he had understood sage intent at this level. He's gotten even stronger. Countless gazes turned towards Di Gang. He stood there proud as a god in the sky. Is he finally going to reveal the best of his abilities? If so, then the battle is probably going to come to an end, everyone thought. Many looked towards Yi Futian, only to see him laugh. Is this all you've got? Chapter 642. The onlookers were all amazed by the confidence in Yi Futian's voice. Did Yi Futian believe that he could defeat Di Gang now? The alchemy pillars created a martial will zone. Di Gang's body seemed to be burning while the sun shone above him. The golden raven tweeted, and its golden light was shed on every corner in this space. The flames penetrated the white lustrous flame as well as Yi Futian's martial zone. The onlookers were all amazed by the confidence in Yi Futian's voice. Did Yi Futian believe that he could defeat Di Gang now? The alchemy pillars created a martial will zone. Di Gang's body seemed to be burning while the sun shone above him. The golden raven tweeted, and its golden light was shed on every corner in this space. The flames penetrated the white lustrous flame as well as Yi Futian's martial zone. The whole battlefield seemed to be in flames. Nothing could survive in this destructive zone. Beams of sharp light projected from the golden space behind Di Gang, and covered his body like an armor ritual implement. But this was not a real implement. The emperor family's ancestors were famous armorers, but then they gave up armory and chose to specialize in martial arts. However, the emperor family still possessed an armorer's life spirit. It could absorb spiritual qi and create a ritual implement. Therefore, Di Gang was not using a ritual implement. He was just releasing his life spirit. It built an impregnable golden raven armor and a chariot for him. Suddenly, many chariots appeared again with dreadful momentum. However, the chariots didn't attack. They just floated around Di Gang. Once they were initiated, everything could be crushed. On a battlefield, D Gang could defeat thousands of enemies just by himself. That was why he had never shown any fear when he challenged those talents from the Holy Ji Palace. If Yi Futian was not here, he really could defeat anyone standing before him with his own power. However, the one standing before him now was Yi Futian, who had unimaginable power. Yi Futian could feel D Gang's power. A non-sage couldn't control true sage power. Even if they had comprehended a bit, there was still a huge difference. Though D Gang was known as the first noble in the alchemy city, it was still impossible for D Gang to defeat a real sage. Yi Futian stood there with starry light surrounding him. The divine ape reached out a giant palm to gather endless spiritual qi. It transformed into a giant starry staff. With the staff in hand, the divine ape looked just like the snow ape. Yi Futian began to move as if practicing a martial arts fist form. An extremely strong will rushed into the divine ape's body. Some fantastic rhythm resonated with the ape. 5 of the 7-star acupoints opened. The giant divine ape's body projected brilliant light, as if a beam of golden light penetrated through its body. Then the divine ape waved its long staff. The endless natural intent became one with it. The ape bathed in endless brilliant light. With great momentum, the ape threw out its first attack. With a ponderous sound, even the air seemed to tremble. Great momentum rolled over and the falling flaming light was shattered. The 9 heavenly attacks was a great attack created by the snow ape. It was not changeless. The higher level Yi Futian was, the deeper the comprehension he could get, and therefore the stronger the power of the 9 heavenly attacks. That power could also be used to strengthen his comprehension and strength. Yi Futian had been cultivating the 9 heavenly attacks the past 2 years since it was the strongest attack he had. He fused his own martial will into the attacks. When the attacks were sent out, his martial will would burst out too. The power it contained was much stronger than it was 2 years ago. Boom! The air trembled again. That giant divine ape waved his staff as if practicing martial arts. Every attack was stronger and scarier than the previous one. At the 3rd attack, great momentum formed in the air and rolled out, seemingly going to crush the barren martial illusion. A dreadful zone formed around Yi Futian. No power could approach the zone at this moment. This is how the 9 heavenly attacks should be. Yuan Zhan raised his head to watch Yi Futian's moves. He seemed to want to memorize every move Yi Futian made. Die! D Gang roared coldly. All of a sudden, he steered his chariot forward. The surrounding flames burned high and his frightening chariot crushed everything it passed. At this moment, however, the 4th attack of the 9 heavenly attacks was sent out. The chariot illusions were all shattered under the waving staff. However, D Gang, protected by the golden raven armor, continued forward in his chariot. The divine ape kept wielding its long staff. Endless spiritual qi fell down and rushed out together with the 5th attack. The chariot under D Gang rushed out. The sun's light also reached out, ready to burn Yi Futian. At the same time, an enormous divine golden raven appeared, trying to resist the 5th attack. With a loud explosion, the giant golden raven was shattered, as well as the chariot. But at this moment D Gang's body grew into a giant. A golden raven flew into his body, making him look like a real war god. He rushed to Yi Futian and sent out a deadly attack. A destructive storm rolled over, seemingly crushing everything into pieces. Almost at the same time, Yi Futian sent out his 6th attack. Endless deterrent might crashed down, supplemented with sage power. The whole world's power seemingly all gathered at one point and melted into Yi Futian's staff. Then the 6th attack was sent out toward that godlike figure. The divine ape staff collided with the war god. Yi Futian could feel extremely horrible destructive power rushing toward him. The staff in hand exploded into pieces and disappeared. However, D Gang stopped suddenly. He just trembled and then stood still. Soon, Yi Futian's dharma and life spirit also vanished. He stood quietly as well. Was the fight over? At this moment, countless people stared at the two on the battlefield. Who exactly was the winner? The martial will and illusions around Yi Futian and D Gang all disappeared. The two stared at each other silently. Some splintering sounds were heard. The golden raven armor on D Gang cracked. It broke into beams of light and vanished. His aura weakened quickly. With a groan, some blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. At this moment, D Gang felt like his insides were all shattered. The power contained in that attack was too strong to be described. I lost, Di Gang admitted defeat. What had happened was like a dream. As the first talent among the young generation of Alchemy City, he knew his strength very well. However, when the enemy was Yi Futian, a grade 3 noble, he'd actually failed. Hearing his admission of defeat, everyone was shocked. How could Di Gang be defeated? Looking at that proud figure, people still couldn't believe the fact that the top talent of Alchemy City was defeated. How strong was Yi Futian, the talent from the Holy Ji Palace? People like Li Futu were startled too. Though having known that Yi Futian was strong, they still couldn't accept the result of this fight. Is it finally over? The disciples from the Holy Ji Palace all smiled faintly. Though this battle didn't take much time, it was still heart-stirring. Di Gang was indeed very talented, but unfortunately, his enemy was the crazy Yi Futian. You're very powerful if you can fight me like this, said Yi Futian. He had run out of every skill he knew in order to defeat Di Gang. Hearing Yi Futian's words, Di Gang spat out some blood. His face turned pale. Was this mockery? Earlier, both had been very proud, but only the winner could laugh at the end. Since he had been defeated, no matter how proud Yi Futian sounded, he couldn't refute it. If he was the winner, he could say things like that. Turning around, Di Gang walked away into the distance. He looked lonely and forlorn. He was once a peerless existence among the young generation. This defeat was enough to break all his pride. Brother, Di Zhou exclaimed softly, looking at Di Gang's receding figure, but he felt depressed too and had no idea what to say. Many famous talents on the stairs were looking at Yi Futian too. Bai Luli looked emotionless. As his senior had said, Yi Futian did have the strength to enter the Sage Temple. When his cultivation became higher, it was very possible for him to break through the Sage Plane. Di Kai was a little speechless. Chu Ji looked at Yi Futian with a smile. She didn't expect that such a flippant guy could be so strong. It was unfortunate that he had a girlfriend. Otherwise, thinking of this, Chu Ji turned to Di Kai with a smile but didn't say anything else to provoke him. The result was obvious. Nothing could change it. At this time, Yi Futian still stood above the alchemy pillars proudly, as if he was the only one in the world. He turned around and looked at Yu Qi, the city lord of the alchemy city. Bowing, he said, "Sir, my senior brother is second place in the alchemy conference. He told me that he admires your daughter very much. I hope that you can permit their marriage." There were two reasons why he fought with Gong Sun Yi and Di Gang today. The first was to solve the conflict with Gong Sun Yi. Secondly, he also wanted to show some of his strength before the City Lord office. It was a tradition of Alchemy City that the City Lord's daughter would marry the number one of the Alchemy Conference. Therefore, the winner's potential must be thought highly of. His senior brother had won the second place, but he didn't have a noble background, so Yi Futian wanted to help him. Yu Shi glanced at Yi Futian from beside Yu Qi, and then looked back at her father. At this moment, Shui Yi also walked out from the crowd and bowed toward Yu Qi. He said, "I have been admiring Yu Shi. Please let me marry her, sir." Neither Yi Futian nor Shui Yi mentioned the affection Yu Shi and Shui Yi felt for each other. They just said that it was Shui Yi who had been admiring Yu Shi. They needed to think for Yu Qi, though everyone knew what was going on. Yu Qi stood there silently and looked at Yi Futian. After killing Gong Sun Yi and defeating Di Gang, Yi Futian asked for his permission in order to help his brother. He knew how to take advantage of timing. Yu Qi didn't like Shui Yi very much because this guy had impregnated his daughter beforehand. This couldn't be allowed. But it had already happened and he had to think about his daughter. "You were originally the second of the alchemy conference," Yu Qi said. "Now that Gong Sun Yi has died, you are number one. Since you have such a request, I will follow tradition and give Yu Shi to you. If you dare to hurt her, I will not forgive you." Since he had announced this, everything was settled now. "Thank you, City Lord." Yi Futian and Shui Yi stood up and smiled at each other. Then Shui Yi looked at Yu Shi. Both smiled happily. The aftermath of the alchemy conference was finally over. Chapter 643. 3 days later, Alchemy City was bustling. 3 days later, Alchemy City was bustling. The City Lord office was the busiest. attracting the whole city's attention. Many big figures from the southwestern Baron state gathered here as well as countless talents and beauties. It was as if another alchemy conference was being held. All of this was just because today was the wedding of Yuxi, the city lord's daughter. Yuxi was going to marry Shui Yi, the second place on the alchemy conference. This was absolutely going to be a great celebration, but many people couldn't understand why it was so hurried. Usually, it would take some time to prepare the wedding after the alchemy conference. It wouldn't be so soon. The city lord office explained that this arrangement was more convenient for guests living far. Otherwise, they would have to come twice. But Yi Futian knew that it was because Yuxi was pregnant. The ceremony had to be held very soon or people would gossip if they learned that Yuxi was pregnant before being married. The city lord office was, to some extent, a landmark of the southwestern Baron state. They had to take its reputation into consideration. In the city lord office at this moment, a courtyard was decorated in a festive way. Shui Ye's close friends like Yi Futian and Zhuge Mingyue were all in the courtyard, looking at this couple with smiles. I never thought that my fourth senior brother would be the first one to get married, Yi Futian exclaimed. But this love story was totally serendipity. If not for Yuxi's stubbornness and Shui Ye's mischievousness, there wouldn't be such an opportunity for them to fall in love. Xiaoshe, it seems that we are the only two who are doomed to be single now. Luo Fan looked at Yi Futian and Hua Jieyu. Their big brother was also living his happy life with goddess Wang Yue on Book Mountain. Second senior sister and third senior brother would also marry soon. Beitang Xinger was taken care of by second senior sister. Only Luo Fan and Yi Xiaoshe were so lonely. With your appearance it might be difficult for you to find your Ms. Right, Shui Yi joked walking over. Brother, you are too mean, Luo Fan complained. I helped you so much. You should at least give me some top sage ritual implements to show your gratitude. It had been really smart for Yi Futian to ask Shui Yi for some ritual implements earlier. He and Shui Ye's qualification for the alchemy conference had already been given to the junior. He had to seize the opportunity to ask Shui Yi, the city lord's son-in-law, for something as compensation. You can stay here with Shui Yi for armor in the future, Yuxi said. You won't have to worry about ritual implements anymore. No. Luo Fan shook his head determinedly. He was not going to stay here and watch this couple's happy life all day long. He refused. You dare to leave? Yuxi looked at Luo Fan with a meaningful smile. Luo Fan looked at Yuxi and blinked. Sister-in-law, you can't do this to me. If she was already like this before marriage, what would she be like in the future? I know all those good ideas you suggested for him, said Yuxi slowly. Luo Fan turned to Shui Yi with shock. You told her? Brother, well done. Luo Fan gritted out. I did that for your good. Stay here and you might find your beauty too. Shui Yi laughed and patted Luo Fan's shoulder. Seeing the two senior brothers, Yi Futian smiled. Fourth senior brother and the fifth senior brother had always been a troublesome pair. Even in the cottage, they bickered as one transcribed books and the other cooked. Both of you are responsible for this, Zhuge Mingyue said. Since you two helped Shui Yi to win second place, you two should stay here. Senior sister. Luo Fan was almost crying. Yes or no? Zhuge Mingyue looked at Luo Fan with a meaningful smile. Yes. Luo Fan nodded. Why, he was always the one that was hurt. Thank you, senior sister. Yuxi smiled at Zhuge Mingyue. Yuxi, if Shui Yi dares to mistreat you, just tell me. I will give him a hard time, said Zhuge Mingyue with a smile. I know. Yuxi laughed and nodded. Then she looked at Shui Yi meaningfully. Shui Yi winced a little. Senior sister overestimates me. Who knows who'll be the bully? I really worry about fourth senior brother's family status. Yi Futian sniggered. He knew why second senior sister made such a decision. The Baron state was too vast. The city lord of Alchemy City was a big name. Even the Holy Ji Palace respected him. He was a symbol of the alchemy field. His family was equal to the Zhuge family in the Baron state. Now, fourth senior brother was Yu Qi's son-in-law. It made sense that Shui Yi and Luo Fan would receive this good background and resources for cultivation. No one would dare to challenge them. It's time. Yu Qi strode over. Sir. Yi Futian's group bowed. No need. Yu Qi looked at Yuxi and said, You are his wife now. In the past you were always too capricious. From now on remember not to be stubborn like that anymore. I know, Yushi responded lightly. Obviously, she still minded what her father had done, but it was all in the past now. She couldn't really hate her father. Shuiyi, I really wanted to kill you, Yuqi said. But you are my son-in-law now. I will teach you everything I know. I wish you will treat my daughter well. If she lives a bad life I won't let you go. I dare not, Shuiyi mumbled. Hearing Shuiyi's complaint, Yuqi couldn't help glaring at him. Yi Futian felt a little sympathetic about his fourth senior brother. Shuiyi's life might be hard now. The ritual implement you asked about is done. Yuqi looked at Yi Futian and Yushang and said, Yushi told me to give both of you this ritual implement. So I made two. This is yours. With that, he took out a small brilliant pagoda. Colorful light covered the pagoda. Yuqi waved his hand. Suddenly, the pagoda grew quickly into a big tower with incredibly strong powers of all attributes rolling within it. Since you chose body enhancement, this pagoda is perfect for you, Yuqi explained. It was cast according to the sky-reaching tower of your Holy Ji Palace. There are strong deterrent forces and all kinds of attributes attacks in it. You can also use it as a ritual implement or train your body and will. Thank you, sir. Yi Futian smiled and looked at Yushi. Thank you, sister-in-law. He didn't expect so much. He just wanted to ask for a ritual implement for Yushang. Yushi smiled gently. She was grateful to Yi Futian for he helped Shuiyi and her get this happy ending. Since Yi Futian wanted this ritual implement, she would help him. She had watched that battle. With his talent and the fact that he was cultivating in the Holy Ji Palace, she believed that he would be the next legend of the barren state. As for him, Yuqi looked at Yushang and said, I have seen his way of battle. He is the disciple of Sage Dojan just like you. By nature he suits body enhancement more than you. Ritual implements aren't actually suitable for his fighting. I made a set of armor. Many of its materials are the same as your pagoda. When activated, the wearer's body will be refined. The armor can be used both to attack and to protect. If he meets a strong enemy, the armor will be triggered to help him to fight. Yuqi took out a set of armor and gave it to Yushang. Thank you, sir, Yushang said, accepting it. Seeing this, Yi Futian felt very relaxed. Not only had he resolved his senior brother's problem during this travel to the alchemy city, but he'd also reached his goals. He entered grade 3 of the noble plane successfully. Everything went well. Let's go, Yuqi said and turned around. Shuiyi and Yushi followed behind. Yi Futian's group also followed. It was time for the ceremony. Guests rustled and bustled in the city lord office. Countless top talents gathered here. When Shuiyi and Yushi walked out hand in hand on the tall podium, everyone grew envious of Shuiyi. No one had expected that Shuiyi would be the one that married the famous beauty. This was a great ceremony. Yi Futian's group stood under the stage and watched everything happening up above. They all felt very happy for Shuiyi. Yushi is a famous beauty of Alchemy City. She only wears light makeup but looks so heart-stirring. Shuiyi is the biggest winner, many young men whispered. Not only did he marry a famous beauty, but he also became the son-in-law of the city lord who was 8th on the barren sky list. This was an enviable position. But he's really bold, someone discussed quietly. He gained this opportunity at the cost of his life spirit. Otherwise, he wouldn't be an option even if Yi Futian killed Gong Sunyi. Many people agreed. It seemed that Shuiyi and Yushi had true feelings for each other. Where is Yi Futian? Somebody asked. Many people searched the crowd. Finally, they found that Yi Futian was standing with Hua Jieyu. Is the girl beside him the divine spiritual sorcerer Hua Jieyu? Someone said. She's like a fairy. Yi Futian is also a big winner in life. The pride of the Holy Ji Palace, disciple of Sage Dojan. He really is. Many people nodded. Yi Futian deserved it though. 3 days ago, even Gong Sunyi, first on the alchemy rank, and Di Gang, pride of the southwestern region of the barren state, were defeated by Yi Futian. This youth looks so innocent that no one expected that he would be so strong. That incredible battle made him well known to all. Some beauties looked at Yi Futian with admiration. He was so talented and handsome. No one would refuse him. Heroes like beauties, and the reverse was true as well. Your fourth senior brother is married now. When will your wedding be held? Zhuge Mingyue teased Yi Futian. You have to ask Jiu. Yi Futian looked at Hua Jieyu and laughed. Looking at Yi Futian, Hua Jieyu responded gently, you decide. Really? Yi Futian blinked. Yes. Hua Jieyu smiled. How about tonight? We don't need too many rituals. Yi Futian smiled too. No way. Hua Jieyu kicked Yi Futian, blushing. Did he have the qualifications to enter the Sage Hall after only 3 years in the Holy Ji Palace? 3 years ago, Hua Fan had obtained the right to enter the Sage Hall and had entered 2 years ago. Now he was already in the Sage Plane. Now Shimin Hanjiang was waiting for his qualification, but the Sage Palace had never discussed allowing Shimin Hanjiang to enter the Sage Hall. Evidently, they felt that Shimin Hanjiang was not that outstanding yet. However, at this moment, the Sage Palace's Lu Chan had gathered all of them for Yi Futian and skipped the first on the law rank, Shimin Hanjiang, to discuss giving the right for Yi Futian to enter the Sage Hall. It was not unexpected though. The Sage Palace was the main palace of all 6 palaces. Now that Lu Chan was managing the Holy Ji Palace on behalf of the Palace Lord. Although Yi Futian was not a disciple of the Sage Palace, Lu Chan would not do such a selfish thing like only caring for his own palace's disciples. Although this fellow can get out of hand, his cultivation potential is exceptional indeed. I agree. Sage Dozhan was the first to agree, causing the crowd to laugh and look at him. 3 years ago, in the entrance examination, we already saw how exceptional he was. He indeed has the qualifications to enter the Sage Hall and cultivate. I agree too. Sage Daozong also nodded and gave his approval. I agree. The Sword Demon, the Sword Palace Lord, nodded and agreed as well. This way there were already 4 palaces in agreement. In reality, the outcome was set. Since that is so, we have a conclusion. I will announce it later, granting Yi Futian permission to enter the Sage Hall to cultivate. Lu Chan nodded and continued. The other matter is about Luli. Back then, when Luli entered the Sage Hall, he obtained the Sage Hall's teachings and the Divine Path's recognition. Wanxiang also estimated his saint potential for him. All of you should also know me and brother's thoughts about this. The Holy Ji Palace will support him wholeheartedly, creating the best conditions for Luli to become a saint. Everyone nodded. They all knew about this. Bai Luli was the next owner of the Holy Ji Palace that they had selected internally. The barren state had not had a saint for many years. Now they needed a saint to appear. The Holy Ji Palace was the same. They could not afford to wait any longer. However, Sage Dozhan had other plans. Although Bai Luli had proven that he had the potential to become a saint and had received the recognition of the Sage Hall's elders, in the future, Yi Futian and Yu Shang could be his rival. In the Holy Ji Palace's law battle area, before the law battle tablet, many people had gathered and were looking astoundingly at a piece of news on the tablet. Yi Futian had obtained the right to enter the Sage Hall and cultivate. What is going on here? Many people were bewildered. They were all cultivating in the palace and naturally did not know what had happened far off in Alchemy City. However, they could guess that it was related to Yi Futian's trip to Alchemy City. What did Yi Futian do this time in Alchemy City? Why did he obtain the right to enter the Sage Hall all of a sudden? Even the current law rank first, Shimin Hanjiang, was still waiting for his right to enter the Sage Hall. However, what awaited him was Yi Futian skipping him and obtaining the right to enter the Sage Hall. Big brother Futian is really capable. There was a beautiful girl grinning happily. It was Long Linger. Now that she had gotten to know more about the Holy Ji Palace, she naturally knew what the Sage Hall meant. He's Yi Futian indeed, shocking people with his every move. Many of those who had entered in the same batch as him discussed. Most of the people in his batch admired Yi Futian. The memories of the sparring session 2 years ago were still fresh in their head. Yi Futian was the only one who dared to face the seniors. Mu Jiqiu was also there. She was speechless. That fellow was getting stronger and stronger. The law rank has also changed. Someone shouted at that moment. They saw an elder from the palace coming forward to renew the law rank. Their gazes were all fixed on one name, Yi Futian. When they saw Yi Futian's name at its new position, All their gazes froze and expressions of disbelief appeared on their faces. They had all imagined that after 2 years of not fighting anyone, Yi Futian had only recently taught Shimengu a lesson. If he were to fight someone, he would not remain 10th on the law rank, and there was a chance he could enter the top 3. However, nobody had imagined that Yi Futian's name would appear on the top of the law rank. Law rank first. He had replaced Shimen Hanjiang. This scene was too shocking. Shimen Hanjiang had spent 6 years to reach where he was. However, he did not even warm the seat before Yi Futian rushed up the rank and replaced him. Why is it like this? There was a teenager who walked forward and questioned loudly. It was Shimengu, the current batch's first in the entrance examination. The moment he entered the palace, he had been violently beaten up by Yi Futian and Yu Shang, causing his reputation to decline rapidly. Now, his brother Shimen Hanjiang's name had been taken and lowered to rank 2 on the law rank while Yi Futian was first. He had never exchanged blows with his brother or had any outstanding performance in the Holy Ji Palace. What right did he have? The law rank has never required any explanation. The elder looked at Shimengu and replied emotionlessly. Even if he was the first in the entrance examination, he had no right to question the law rank. If he was unhappy about the rankings, he could simply challenge the first and get it back through his own strength. The law rank would then change again. When Shimengu entered the palace, he was taught a lesson by Yi Futian. But Shimen Hanjiang did not step in. This time, Yi Futian replaced him as the first on the law rank and obtained the right to enter the Sage Hall. No matter how much self-restraint Shimen Hanjiang has, he probably cannot bear it, many people thought. This was no longer a matter of restraint, but the palace thinking that Yi Futian was more outstanding than Shimen Hanjiang. Moreover, the palace felt that Yi Futian was far more outstanding. As the previous first on the law rank, how prideful would he be? Could he take it lying down? The news quickly spread to the Sage Palace, into the ears of Shimen Hanjiang and the other Sage Palace disciples. Presently, there were many people gathered around Shimen Hanjiang. Bai Zhe, Zhuge and many others had come. When they heard the news, they were equally infuriated, especially Bai Zhe. From the moment he had entered the palace, he had had enmity with Yi Futian. The entire palace knew that as long as Yi Futian, there would be no place for Bai Zhe. He would always be suppressed. Now, Yi Futian was first on the law rank and permitted to enter the Sage Hall. How could this be? Shimen Hanjiang maintained his silence from start to the end. Chapter 645. When Yi Futian returned to the Holy Ji Palace, news of his return spread throughout the palace. Next, in the Battle Sage Palace, Qi Jie found Yi Futian and notified him of his qualification to enter the Sage Hall and the change on the law rank. When Yi Futian returned to the Holy Ji Palace, news of his return spread throughout the palace. Next, in the Battle Sage Palace, Qi Jie found Yi Futian and notified him of his qualification to enter the Sage Hall and the change on the law rank. When Yi Futian heard Qi Jie's words, a strange expression appeared on his face. He did not expect that his battle in the Alchemy City had not only solved his brother's problem and gotten him a ritual implement, but it had also earned him the qualification to enter the Sage Hall to cultivate. This was an unexpected surprise. As for being first on the low rank, he did not care. After all, it would have happened sooner or later. 3 years ago, when you entered the palace, you were the target of many. 2 years ago, you proved yourself in the sparring session. I didn't expect that you would rise to the first on the law rank so quickly. Do you know how many people in the palace are looking for you now? Qi Jie said with a fake smile. Among the thousands of disciples in the palace, the first on the law rank meant that he was the number 1 in the noble plane and could represent his generation. From Bai Luli to Huafan to Yi Futian, every one of them could represent a generation of disciples. Previously, everyone thought that Shimen Hanjiang would become the generation symbol, but they had not expected that it would be taken away by Yi Futian so quickly. This way, Shimen Hanjiang would be simply a transitional character. He must have been very angry. Yi Futian paid no notice and smiled. So what if they could find him? Brother, when can I enter the Sage Hall? Yi Futian was more concerned about that. The Sage Hall probably contained the palace's saint teachings. The Holy Ji Palace's divine teachings were known as the Sage Hall. It would definitely be more complete than the divine teachings in the top 3 schools and might be an opportunity for him. He had returned this time, preparing to cultivate and raise his strength, raising his cultivation level to the pinnacle of the noble plane and attempting to break through to the sage plane. He could only be considered an expert in the barren state after he had broken through to the sage plane. You can enter as a grade 1 noble. Even among the palace's disciples, only a select few can enter the sage hall. Even the first on the law rank might not be able to enter the sage hall. Take Shimin Hanjiang for example. However, those who enter the sage hall are definitely the first on the law rank. Qijie smiled and replied. Yi Futian wondered if the change on the law rank was because he had obtained the qualification to enter the sage hall, so he needed to be first. Entering the sage hall at that level can assist you in breaking through to the sage plane, Qijie explained. Yi Futian nodded and replied, if that is so, I will need to focus on my cultivation for a period of time. Thank you for coming to inform me, brother. Make sure you focus. Qijie smiled and left. After Qijie left, Lulan Shui and Yi Qingxian looked curiously at Yi Futian and Yu Sheng. The two of them had not gone to Alchemy City, so what had happened that the elders in the palace had made such a decision before they had even returned? They had also heard much discussion in the past few days. Rumor had it that to enter the Sage Hall, all 6 palaces had to gather for a discussion, and more than half had to agree to the decision. This meant that at least 4 of the 6 palaces in the Holy Ji Palace had agreed for Yi Futian to enter the Sage Hall. Evidently, Yi Futian had moved the palace's elders. What did you do? Yi Qingxian moved up close to Yi Futian and asked cutely. Ask your man. Yi Futian smiled and replied. Yi Qingxian glared at him, then saw Yi Futian smile at her and say, oh right, Yu Sheng brought you a gift from the Alchemy City. Yi Qingxian blinked and looked at Yu Sheng. Yu Sheng scratched his head shyly. Back then when they had placed their bets in the Alchemy Casino, he had placed a bet using Ning Huang's halberd and picked some good items for Qingxian using his spoils of victory. Yes. Yu Sheng nodded. Yi Qingxian came up to him and hugged his arm. Hey, my wife isn't around, don't show off how happy your relationship is in front of me. Yi Futian smiled and poked fun at them. Then continued, Yu Sheng, have a good rest today. We need to focus on cultivating starting tomorrow. You need to enter the upper noble plane soon. Now that Futian was in the upper noble plane, Yu Sheng's cultivation level could not fall behind him, so he needed to ensure Yu Sheng's cultivation speed. Okay. Yu Sheng nodded and was then dragged away by Yi Qingxian. Before she left, Yi Qingxian made a face at Yi Futian. Show off, Yi Futian smiled and said. He then turned to Lulan Shui and said, I brought you a gift too. As he said that, he took out 2 items. One of them was a treasure book. He passed it to Lulan Shui and said, the sage treasure book you had previously is too weak now. This book is at the pinnacle of the sage plane and has a secret methods index within. It can also be assimilated into your life spirit. After that, Yi Futian took out another transparent water crystal and passed it to Lulan Shui. The crystal appeared to have a giant snake within it. This is a crystal made from a water element demonic beast, the vine serpent's spiritual will. It can combine with your spiritual energy and assist you in your cultivation. It can support you by increasing your spiritual energy and your water intent, and can even be used in battle, Yi Futian said. The vine serpent was an extremely strong water element demonic beast, and could freeze people on sight as it had innate water element spiritual capabilities. Thank you, Lulan Shui said as she took the items. She liked the 2 treasures very much. Yi Futian evidently put in a lot of effort into picking them, and they were very suitable for her cultivation. This time we had a lot of spoils in Alchemy City. All of us got elite sage plane ritual implements, so I got you 2 as well. Yi Futian looked at Lulan Shui's indifferent expression. The hardest debt to repay was relationships. Although he had seen through the Celestial Empress' intentions, he still felt a tinge of guilt towards Lulan Shui. If Lulan Shui had wanted anything, he would feel that it was okay, but Lulan Shui's selflessness made him feel that he owed her all the more. Big brother Mimi. Beside him, the black-winged condor flapped its wings and said softly to Yi Futian, what about you? Yi Futian looked back at the black-winged condor and asked. The black-winged condor blinked its eyes, thinking, big brother, aren't you very smart? I've already given you such an obvious hint. It can't be that you want a treasure too? Yi Futian looked at him with a knowing smile and replied. This fellow had become crafty too. No, of course not. Seeing Yi Futian's expression, the black-winged condor shuddered and replied, It's just that I've missed you. Sigh, he's bullying me for not being a human. Be good, there are no more treasures. I'll get some for you next time. Yi Futian smiled and stroked the black-winged condor's head. The black-winged condor obediently lowered its head, thinking, as long as I follow Big Brother, I will still do well in the future. Big Brother Futian. At that moment, a crisp voice sounded out. A slim tall girl rushed up and hugged Yi Futian's arm. She glared at him and said, Big Brother Futian, how could go out and have fun without me? You just entered the palace to cultivate and you're already thinking of going out? Yi Futian looked speechlessly at the little devil in front of him. I'm unhappy. Long Linger pouted and said unhappily. Brother brought you a gift. Yi Futian smiled while saying. He then took out a treasure for Long Linger. At the side, the black-winged condor eyes were as wide as plates. This is what he meant by no more treasures. Sigh, life is tough for a condor. If only I was a human, no a beauty. I knew that Big Brother Futian treated me best. Long Linger immediately became happy. The black-winged condor stood at the side, silently saying to himself, An 18-year-old girl, how could you, master? You're worse than a beast. Yi Futian had finally placated the little devil and got some peace. He gave Lulan Shui some orders, then walked straight to his residence, preparing for a good rest. He thought whether or not he wanted to ask Jeyu to come over and rest together. In some aspects he admired his fourth brother. In the next few days there were people looking for Yi Futian every day, but they were all stopped by Lulan Shui, claiming that Yi Futian was cultivating in seclusion and would not meet anyone nor take any challenges. Since the people who had gone to Alchemy City had already returned, the incident in Alchemy City naturally could not be kept under wraps. Soon everyone knew that Yi Futian had led the Holy Ji Palace's disciples to Alchemy City, and swept the geniuses of Alchemy City, killing the Alchemy Conference's #1 and defeating Alchemy City's #1 prodigy. Many disciples lamented that this fellow was too much of a prodigy. It was no wonder that he had reached the first on the law rank. However, some of the elite noble plane figures on the law rank still wanted to spar with Yi Futian to ascertain their cultivation results. Although Yi Futian had defeated many geniuses in Alchemy City, they had not been to Alchemy City, so they did not know how strong those people were. The Holy Ji Palace's disciples were originally a congregation of the Barren State's most elite geniuses. However, those who had wanted to look for Yi Futian to spar were all denied access under the claim that he was in seclusion. In reality, he was simply not free. Inside the Daozong Palace, many people had gathered outside. Today was the day that Sage Daozong would give his lecture again. Lian Yuqing, Yun Shuisheng, Xiang Zhiqin, Yun Feng, and a few other of Sage Daozong's disciples were in the crowd. Little sister, you went to Alchemy City. This time Yi Futian became first on the law rank. What do you think about it? At that moment, one of the experts on the law rank looked towards Xiang Zhiqin and asked. He naturally did not ask Hua Jieyu, nor did he ask Phoenix or Yun Shuisheng. These two had accompanied Yi Futian there, and were quite close with him. Xiang Zhiqin recalled the battle and Yi Futian's figure appeared in her head. She looked at him and replied softly, It's well deserved. The surrounding people looked at her with surprised expressions. Everyone knew about the conflict between Xiang Zhiqin and Yi Futian. Now that Xiang Zhiqin said such things about him, it was indeed intriguing. Zhiqin, although Yi Futian managed to sweep all of Alchemy City, he is still a grade 3 noble. Although his potential may be deserving of rank 1, the law rank first has never been awarded to experts with potential. He only managed to defeat D Gang in a tough battle, but everyone at the top of the law rank are elite nobles. Are they weaker than Alchemy City's D Gang? Beside her, Yun Feng continued, moreover, Brother Lian has long been at the pinnacle of the noble plane. Now he is approaching the brink of the sage plane. The palace must be exaggerating by placing Yi Futian as the law rank first. Even Yi Futian has been avoiding challenges these few days. In the past 2 years, Yun Feng had gradually gotten over his trauma. However, Yi Futian had returned and became first on the law rank, causing him to be extremely frustrated. Lian Yuqing did not say anything. 3 years ago he was 5th on the law rank. Now 3 years had passed. He was a genius that had entered in the same batch as Hua Fan. He was still the 5th on the law rank, but the names in front of him had changed greatly. Xiang Zhiqin looked at Lian Yuqing, then said softly, in terms of pure battle ability, there is probably nobody who can compete with him in the palace. Many people were astounded and turned to look at Bing Yi Phoenix and Hua Jieyu. The three of them sat quietly, not interested in the least, as though they had not heard the conversation going on. This scene made many of the Daozong Palace's disciples speechless. Out of the Daozong Palace's 4 elite beauties, 3 of them had extremely good relations with Yi Futian and had accompanied him to Alchemy City. Now even Xiang Zhiqin, who had a grudge against Yi Futian, was speaking up for him. Lian Yuqing, who had been sitting quietly, raised his head slightly, looking at the Daozong Palace in front of him. The memories from the sparring session 2 years ago were still fresh in his mind. He had personally witnessed Yi Futian receiving the legacy of the 9-fingered Guqin demon. That was something that he had always wanted but was unable to obtain. For the past 2 years he had cultivated in silence. Just like Yi Futian, he had not fought anyone. When has the law rank first been so casually decided? Lian Yuqing asked softly, and the surrounding disciples' expressions all froze. Was this Lian Yuqing's attitude? Yi Futian had never had a battle with the elites of the palace. Although all the disciples acknowledged that his potential was unrivaled, that was the first spot on the law rank. If he was placed second, he would not garner such a huge reaction. Now many people probably had the same attitude as Lian Yuqing. Chapter 646. Yi Futian kept training in the Battle Sage Palace. While voices of doubt had been all over the place in the Holy Ji Palace, he paid no heed to it and chose not to fight to prove anything. He did not even say a word about anything. As such, those voices kept circulating throughout. While there were many who believed him, it seemed that those voices would stay around until he came out to prove himself. Yi Futian kept training in the Battle Sage Palace. While voices of doubt had been all over the place in the Holy Ji Palace, he paid no heed to it and chose not to fight to prove anything. He did not even say a word about anything. As such, those voices kept circulating throughout. While there were many who believed him, it seemed that those voices would stay around until he came out to prove himself. Many top-notch figures ranked on law rank spoke out. For instance, Lian Yuqing criticized Yi Futian and voiced his doubt openly during the day Sage Daozong was giving a lecture, demanding to know since when had the law rank come to give such little regard about the rankings? The Holy Ji Palace was known for its openness, and students were pretty much allowed to do as they pleased. It was not even seen as problematic to doubt the rankings on law rank. So long as they had the power to back their claims, they were free to break the rankings through their own actions. The elders of the Holy Ji Palace did nothing to intervene. A tower was placed in the compound of the Battle Sage Palace where Yi Futian lived. Yi Futian sat cross-legged within the tower. Fearsome flowing lights circled around the tower. Violent lightning bolts, earth-shattering tornadoes, terrifying flames, bone-chilling frost and so on. The will of every element was suppressed within the tower, and they were brought to bear on Yi Futian. The tower was a deliberate attempt to imitate the sky-reaching tower of the Holy Ji Palace by Yu Qi. It was built for refining one's body, and Yi Futian was welcome to train his body up any time he wished to use it. At the same time, the tower also served as a place to temper one's will. Furthermore, that ritual implement allowed him to adjust the magnitude of force which he wished to subject himself to. Everything was controlled by his own will. It was the prowess of a masterpiece crafted by the best master armorer there was. At the very least, a treasure that was made specifically for refining one's body like that was not something the Holy Ji Palace was capable of creating. Only top-notch figures from Alchemy City were capable of such a feat. It was due to such reasons that Alchemy City enjoyed a prestigious status in all of the barren state. Yi Futian halted his training, shrinking the tower back to the size of a palm and put it away. Yi Futian walked out of the compound. His progress seemed to be getting increasingly slow. While he was already a grade 3 noble, it seemed like it would have taken a while more still before he could become a grade 1 noble. Lulan, how is Yusheng doing? Yi Futian asked Lulan Shui. I heard that he made it through to superior noble planes a while ago. Lulan Shui replied. Yi Futian smiled in response, thinking it to be a normal occurrence. Is there anything else happening in the Holy Ji Palace as of lately? Lulan Shui looked uneasy at the question, telling him, there are many who doubt your rank as number 1 on law rank. Phoenix looked for you for a while, saying that there is something she needed to talk to you about training, but she left as soon as she heard that you are shutting yourself in to train. There are many others who came to the Battle Sage Palace, but I dismissed all of them. Go to Daozong Palace and tell Phoenix that she is welcome to look for me anytime. Other than that, keep an eye on Jieyu and see if she is training, Yi Futian said, thinking that Hua Jieyu was not being nice, as she made no attempt to come look for him. He could have just go to Daozong Palace himself, but he found it tiresome to deal with all those trivial matters. He had kicked up quite a ruckus back in Daozong Palace, and he would have made himself the center of attention again if he were to show up there. Will do. Lulan Shui nodded lightly and left. Yi Futian remained where he was and heard someone coming. It was Yu Shang, and he said to Yi Futian just as soon as he came close enough, if there is someone who doesn't like you, you can just go tell them to shut up. Outstanding people invite jealousy from others all the time. Yi Futian added with a smile, can you just tell everyone to shut up then? I couldn't care less, just as they leave me alone. Yu Shang felt rather startled at Yi Futian, and nodded seriously. Outstanding. How does it feel breaking through? Yi Futian asked. Would you like to have a go? Yu Shang felt rather energetic. Despite the brutal processes involved in training, he felt himself exploding with power all over his body after every session. After he began practicing the Broken Heaven techniques, it was as if he needed to exude that extra energy all the time. Yeah right, get lost, Yi Futian cursed under his breath. He would have rather fought a grade 1 noble like Di Gang instead of fighting Yu Shang, who was of the same plane. Yu Shang's body was so tough that Yi Futian would have risked hurting himself fighting Yu Shang instead of hurting the other guy. Let's go out for a bit. Yi Futian began walking. Both of them left the compound and came to the edge of Battle Sage Palace. He stared at the tall, magnificent Holy Ji Palace before him, thinking that 3 years had passed in the blink of an eye. Yushi was about to give birth in the coming months, and Yi Futian would then become an uncle of the baby. Yu Shang, where do you think Godfather is? Yi Futian thought about how he had not been seeing his godfather in 10 years, and could not have helped himself but ask. Yu Shang shook his head. It had been quite a while since the last time Yi Futian asked. It has been quite a number of years and I'm wondering if he has gotten old. If he is still watching us train? Yi Futian chuckled. If his godfather was indeed somebody as claimed, there was no way his godfather could have turned old yet. A few figures were seen coming from afar. Yi Futian saw beautiful silhouettes with bright smiles on their faces. Here comes my wife, Yi Futian shouted with a smile, and Hua Jieyu rolled her eyes. Phoenix, Yi Futian addressed the other girl. I have developed comprehension of a type of spirit zone and spell. Care to have a look? Phoenix asked Yi Futian. Sure. Yi Futian nodded. Phoenix cast her gaze forward, unleashing a streak of overbearing aura. The air around her turned heavy and fearsome as Tri-Elemental Spiritual Qi whipped about around. Fire Elemental Spiritual Qi turned especially fearsome. A terrifying shadow of a phoenix appeared in the air all of a sudden, basking in undying fires out to burn everything down. Yi Futian cast his gaze forward, unleashing all-powerful cold will to snuff the fires out. Yet the fire of the phoenix lit up again as if a phoenix was becoming increasingly powerful, basking in fire. Very well done. Yi Futian smiled. This is Flames of Nirvana. While it is a type of fusion power, I feel something is missing still, Phoenix said. Do not attempt to deliberately try to control the spiritual qi. Focus on your spirit zone. There is no need to deliberately try to sense the elemental nature of the spiritual qi. The spell will come on its own, Yi Futian elaborated. He extended his hand as soon as he finished, conjuring a powerful spirit zone, and a spell was born as well. The flames within the air felt as if they were being frozen, before dissipating entirely. A flash of realization was seen in Phoenix's eyes and she nodded. I will try again when I return. Yi Futian had developed an unusually deep understanding of the workings of this particular area. The difference between the noble plane and the planes before lied within the noble will. Yi Futian was already at the pinnacle when the understanding of will was concerned, and there was no doubt that he was a noble at the pinnacle of his training. Yet, Yi Futian nodded lightly and turned his eyes elsewhere. He gazed at a place not far before him. There was a silhouette carrying an ancient sword. A girl tall, lithe and exuding an aura of brilliance. Yan Qinggu. Yi Futian looked at the girl below and said. She was ranked second on the law rank, and she was better at swordsmanship than her brother, Yan Jiu. I heard that you defeated my brother again in Alchemy City, Yan Qinggu said. Your brother? Yi Futian smiled and shook his head. I've stopped considering him my match for quite a while. You can say whatever you like since you are now ranked first on the law rank. There are many who admire you in the Holy Ji Palace, and you've gained the right to enter the Sage Hall. I'd really like to see for myself how powerful you truly are. Would you mind? Yan Qinggu said. The difference between you and me is too great. There is no point to doing so, Yi Futian said. You requested to battle against the noble at the pinnacle of their training on the sparring sessions back when you were still a grade 8 noble. If you were able to do so, why can't I? Yan Qinggu asked. That was different, Yi Futian said. But if you wanted to test yourself so badly, give it a shot. Yan Qinggu nodded, conjuring countless sword will around her in an instant. She came to bask herself in the dazzling light of the sword as well, gathering the sword will around her. She turned to look incredibly blinding before turning herself into a sword and coming for Yi Futian. Yi Futian spared a glance at her before bursting incredibly powerful noble will. In that very split second, Yan Qinggu felt everything around her slow, and she herself became incredibly heavy. Her sword was in the same state as she was. She soon found herself unable to move, being frozen in the air. She turned her eyes at the silhouette dressed in white and came to realize the difference in power between them. Was this the power of the will of a true top-notch genius noble? Boom! The pressure was lifted in a second. Her body and sword kept moving forward like a bolt of lightning. But Yi Futian was soon seen stopping her sword between his fingers. The sword aura around her raged, but Yi Futian hardly budged. If you are thinking about surpassing me, I'm afraid that is something you will never be able to achieve, Yi Futian said with a smile. He then twisted his fingers, flinging Yan Qinggu with her sword far away, making her look rather awkward. As she steadied herself and looked at Yi Futian, Yan Qinggu felt as if she was standing right in front of a near insurmountable mountain. If you take pride in yourself so much, why don't you just go prove yourself in front of the students and dispel their doubts once and for all? Yan Qinggu asked. Yi Futian looked at Yan Qinggu and smiled. The responding dragon was known as the Lord of the Skies. The rock was called the Celestial King. While the rock might actually fight with the responding dragon to see who reigns supreme in the air, have you ever heard of the rock actually proving its abilities to eagles? Make no mistake. I'm the current number 1 on the law rank. Yan Qinggu felt a shudder deep down as soon as Yi Futian finished. It was something that came from her soul. Her eyes followed the smiling young man, as she continued to feel a thick air of pride around him. She had never had such bold words before, and she had never seen anyone smiling so confidently. Since when did the rock need to prove itself to eagles? The rock would only fight with the responding dragon to see who reigned supreme in the air. That line meant that Yi Futian would only fight with the best. Those who doubted him were hardly worth his time, and he deemed it pointless to prove himself. Who will be considered the best in Yi Futian's eyes? Someone like Bai Luli? He was being very apt with one thing. He is the current number 1 on the law rank. He doesn't need to prove to anyone else about anything. The law rank itself is the best proof there is. Yan Qinggu left, but she kept feeling restless. His words moved her deeply. She thought herself to be a genius like no other and was very arrogant, thinking she was some superior being. She only came to realize that if she wanted to go far, she did not need that sense of superiority around her, as the ones she needed to compete with were those who were more exceptional than she was. The sense of superiority came only when one competed with weaklings. Chapter 647. The words that Yi Futian said to Yan Qinggu shook the entire Holy Ji Palace to its core in no time. Him being granted entrance to the Sage Hall and his status as the number one in the law rank contributed to the hype surrounding him. Even though those ranked high in the law rank gave their opinions on the matter, no one had expected Yi Futian's long-awaited comment to be so overbearing and imposing. He likened him to the Lord of the Skies, and he made it clear that he did not bother proving anything to the ones who doubted him. All that meant that the very reason he did not bother replying was simply because he had never bothered himself with the opinions of those who doubted him, right from the very beginning. The rock did not, after all, bothered itself with what eagles thought about it. The words that Yi Futian said to Yan Qinggu shook the entire Holy Ji Palace to its core in no time. Him being granted entrance to the Sage Hall and his status as the number one in the law rank contributed to the hype surrounding him. Even though those ranked high in the law rank gave their opinions on the matter, no one had expected Yi Futian's long-awaited comment to be so overbearing and imposing. He likened him to the Lord of the Skies, and he made it clear that he did not bother proving anything to the ones who doubted him. All that meant that the very reason he did not bother replying was simply because he had never bothered himself with the opinions of those who doubted him, right from the very beginning. The rock did not, after all, bothered itself with what eagles thought about it. His comment was seen as an insult to countless mighty ones in the Holy Ji Palace, as everyone who had doubted him was looked down on, including those who ranked high on the law rank. It was as if Yi Futian was saying, "I'll never consider you worthy of fighting me." There were also quite a lot who defended Yi Futian. Many students of the same batch, as he even began to look up to him. Such was the bearing of the one ranked first on the law rank. Yi Futian, after all, dared to provoke all of his seniors back in the sparring sessions about 3 years ago. More than 2 years had passed since, and he had gone on a trip to Alchemy City, bringing with him a group of students, and practically went mopping the place with the best Alchemy City had to offer. He became the champion of law rank as soon as he returned. Legends were usually made in such ways. Yi Futian had always had such potential, and many wondered how many great achievements awaited him in the future. Many made their way to the Battle Sage Palace and were able to tell, thanks to what Yi Futian had said that day, there would definitely be people who were eager to fight him. Many of those who ranked high on the law rank were students who entered the Holy Ji Palace 6 or even 9 years ago. Those people were equally as prideful, and they were not going to tolerate a latecomer stealing their thunder with such insolent words. In a nutshell, there would definitely be someone who was eager to see for themselves what the number one on the law rank was made of. As many expected, the masses beneath the Battle Sage Palace grew as more and more people gathered there. The majority, however, simply watched what was about to happen silently from below. Yi Futian took note of the fact that more people showed up at his door. As such, he simply stayed where he was and made no attempt to leave. He did not bother with the growing numbers outside and went on to keep chatting with Hua Jieyu and Phoenix. Even Long Linger came to the Battle Sage Palace after catching wind of what happened. Yuan Zhan, Yi Shaoshi, Su Ke, Yi Wuchen, Zui Qianqiu, and many others gathered around as well. Seems to me that something interesting is about to happen. Su Ke lied on the ground at the edge of the Battle Sage Palace and said, "Qianqiu, do you have any wine with you?" "No," Zui Qianqiu answered casually. "Well then, it seems like I'll be one of those eagles you speak of, and this eagle is very interested to see how high you, the rock, are capable of flying," Zhou Hao said, looking at Yi Futian. "Your name?" Yi Futian said plainly. Many looked astonished at the 2 words uttered. Yi Futian did not even bother knowing someone ranked 10th on law rank. Actually, Yi Futian knew very little people in the Holy Ji Palace. He had been busy training in the past 3 years, and with the exception of that sparring session where he got to see many around him, he seldom interacted with any of the palace's students. As such, the number of people he knew was very limited. Zhou Hao looked just as astonished. He did not expect all that. Yi Futian did not even know his name, a renowned figure ranked 10th on the Holy Ji Palace's law rank. It was a humiliation like no other. Yet he simply smirked and said, "Zhou Hao." Yi Futian recalled something, as it seemed that the one who ranked before him was someone named Zhou Hao. "Are you satisfied now?" Zhou Hao leaped into the air, bursting in dazzling brilliance. Everyone who ranked in the top 10 on the law rank, with the exception of Yi Futian, were all top-notch nobles. Zhou Hao was no exception. right? Yi Futian nodded lightly but did not move. Yi Futian instead turned his eyes sideways and shouted, Yu Shang. Yu Shang, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, stood and walked to the edge of Battle Sage Palace. Many froze in place as that scene unfolded before them, staring at the figures above them with startled looks. It seemed that everything was in place for a battle to begin, and everyone waited for Yi Futian to make a move. However, the man called for Yu Shang instead. Is he trying to joke with us? Is Yu Shang going to be the one to fight instead? Zhou Hao's face was ashen beyond belief. He did not mind that Yi Futian did not know his name, but at that very moment, he truly felt insulted. Zhou Hao was still one who ranked 10th on the law rank. Yi Futian might not have known him, but he could have at least given him the respect he deserved. You really want to do it like this? Zhou Hao glanced at Yu Shang and asked, before turning his eyes back on Yi Futian. His voice was cold. After this battle, you will be out of the top 10. Yi Futian said plainly after he spared a glance at Zhou Hao beneath him. Chapter 648. Since there were people who doubted his place as number 1 on the law rank, Yi Futian saw fit to have Yu Shang make it as one of the top 10 before he did anything. Since there were people who doubted his place as number 1 on the law rank, Yi Futian saw fit to have Yu Shang make it as one of the top 10 before he did anything. After that battle, Yu Shang would have a high ranking on the law rank. Zhou Hao, who was currently ranked 10th, would be kicked out of the top 10 as a result. Zhou Hao stared at Yi Futian with cold eyes. What Yi Futian was more than just arrogant. The man deemed himself to reign supreme above all, and cared nothing about the one who ranked 10th on the law rank. Yi Futian's arrogance was so astounding that he did not even see a need for himself to fight, having Yu Shang do it instead. This is truly arrogance like none other. Boom! Blinding golden lights glittered and an old clock of incredible size appeared right behind Zhou Hao. The workings of the clock were crisp, exuding frighteningly appalling might like none other. A pair of incredibly bright golden wings appeared behind him, which looked like the wings of a divine eagle. Zhou Hao possessed 2 life spirits, the skyscraping clock and the golden flame eagle. He specialized in spiritual elemental powers and had developed abilities in many elements, such as metal, fire, wind, and so on. He trained in martial arts as well, making him a tough opponent. The one who ranked 10th on the law rank was no ordinary folk. Anyone who was capable of making into the Holy Ji Palace was an elite existing at a ratio of 1 in 1,000. Those ranked high on the law rank were especially so. All of them who were able to make it that high were nothing short of being geniuses. Many more arrived after hearing Yi Futian's metaphor. Yu Shang stepped forward. His stout body stood tall in the air, bringing incredible pressure to bear on everyone around him. Yu Shang looked like a god of war simply standing where he was alone. Many seemed to have seen the shadow of Sage Dojan just by looking at Yu Shang. Yu Shang resembled Sage Dojan more than Yi Futian as he was a natural-born warrior. It remained a question, however, if he proved adequate to fight Zhou Hao. Coldness was seen in Zhou Hao's eyes. He waved his hands, conjuring shadows of golden old clocks. His life spirit, the skyscraping clock, continued to grow in size, reaching the heavens and filling the air with terrifying spiritual will. Everything within the vicinity seemed to be covered in a very terrifying pressure. Zhou Hao, as one who ranked 10th on the law rank, knew well of the weakness of ones who devoted their time to train their bodies. Spiritual will attacks were the most effective against people like that, and he specialized in such attacks. His spiritual will melded with the space. The skyscraping clock shone in dazzling golden colors as it descended upon them in a crazed manner. Shadows of countless golden old clocks appeared, heading for Yu Shang. At that very moment, even those far away and on the clock covered their ears and shut their senses off. Anyone who was of meager training backed away to any far corner. The formless spiritual will invaded minds and trembled within. The shockwave from such an attack was able to make them feel like they were being shaken to their core, and it was anyone's guess what it felt like the one being targeted by the attack. Countless shadows of golden old clocks continued descending, all of which were imbued with 2 types of incredibly violent offensive powers. Yu Shang took one step forward. Streaks of light permeated through his body and the 7-star acupoints opened. His body seemed to be filled with powers of unparalleled violent nature. Furthermore, the The 7-star acupoints activated his spiritual will powers, filling him with violent power all over his body. The wings of the Dozhan body took to resemble the wings of the devil as they slashed forward. Yu Sheng took one step in the air, heading for Zhou Hao as he turned into a true god of war. Boom! The earth and heaven shook as a powerful surge of martial arts will burst. Yu Sheng made it before Zhou Hao. An illusion welled up in Zhou Hao's mind. The incoming shadow of the devil seemed to demand every living thing to submit to it, and live only to revere it. Zhou Hao's body backed away. Yet dark golden devil halberd was seen raining down from the heavens, cutting through the air and preventing his escape. The huge devil threw yet another punch. Hundreds of thousands of fist will were infused with that one attack, and terrifying flowing lights were conjured in the air, toppling everything before it. Zhou Hao was eventually able to feel the fearsome pressure behind the attack. The skyscraping clock lashed out but was quickly thrown off with a loud clang by the punch, as if it was to be split apart. Zhou Hao spat up blood as he whipped out with his wings to slash at Yu Sheng. The arms of the devil moved forward without care, killing anything that stood in their way. When the incredibly sharp wings cut down on it, gashes appeared on the arms. However, the arms moved forward without a care. Zhou Hao wanted to retreat, but Yu Sheng continued to move another step forward, bringing the might of his devil to bear as the fist went down on Zhou Hao. The punch covered Zhou Hao as he was sent flying. Boom! A grunt was heard as Zhou Hao's body was sent flying far away. Many followed the scene with their eyes and saw Zhou Hao's body looking smaller and smaller before he hit the ground. Zhou Hao was unable to even steady himself afterward. It was anyone's guess how many bones that one punch ended up breaking. Many turned to look at Yu Sheng, who was still standing in the air. They were shaken to their cores. They never knew Yu Sheng to be that terrifying before. As Yi Futian said before, Zhou Hao was no longer among the top 10 after the battle. Yu Sheng made it as one of the top-ranked figures on the law rank. Anyone else feeling displeased? Yu Sheng scanned everyone below coldly as he said with an imposing voice. Many of the proud sons and daughters of the Holy Ji Palace doubted Yi Futian's place as number 1 on the law rank. Yu Sheng thought that the only way to deal with such disputes was to simply beat them into submission. Zhou Hao, who previously ranked 10th on the law rank, did not get Yi Futian to move. He suffered a crushing defeat at Yu Sheng's hands instead. It was anyone's guess how many dared make a move after what happened. It now seemed that only the top 5 on the law rank were deemed capable of fighting Yi Futian. Yi Futian remained sitting where he was, watching his friend fight. Su Ke was seen lying, drinking with Zui Qianqiu and Yi Wuqian. He said to the other two, "I'm getting bored, shall we head back to Sword Palace?" "I'm thinking of leaving too." Zui Qianqiu nodded in agreement. He found what happened too ugly to behold. Are those two trying to bag the first and second place of the law rank for themselves? They were able to tolerate one insane genius, but two proved a little too much for them to stomach. Bai Zhe, Zhuge and the others looked unwell after seeing what happened. Bai Zhe had been crushed by Yu Sheng in that sparring session more than 2 years ago. Now Yu Sheng proved powerful enough to defeat the one who ranked 10th on the law rank, and he did so as a grade 3 noble. That one battle would probably make him one of the top 3 on the law rank. 2 students of the Battle Sage Palace in the same batch would be taking 2 of the 3 places in the top 3. The Holy Sage Pavilion, the main institution out of all 6, never felt so weak in their batch. Another figure walked out in the resulting silence. Many looked rather elated seeing that figure make a move. So one of the top 5 is finally making a move? It was Lian Yuqing. He already ranked 5th on the law rank when Yi Futian first entered the Holy Ji Palace. Furthermore, many in the Holy Ji Palace knew well of the feud between Lian Yuqing and Yi Futian. "You wish to fight?" Yu Sheng looked down at Lian Yuqing. Lian Yuqing spared a glance at Yu Sheng before moving his gaze past him, looking at Yi Futian at the edge of the Battle Sage Palace and saying, "During the sparring session 2 years ago, you bested me with the Yukio song. But your plane was too low back then. Now you are number 1 on the law rank, and I'd like to see what the Yukio song is truly capable of once again. This time, however, it won't just be the battle of skills, but a true battle using musical spells." Many were able to tell what Lian Yuqing's words meant. He was never able to let go of the fact that he lost to Yi Futian back in that sparring session all those years ago. That defeat remained a thorn at his side. What he truly wanted right there and then was a true battle using the Guqin with Yi Futian. Instead, the song made them feel depressed and heavy. The sunlight was shining down and the sky was clear. The weather was great, but when they heard the song, an artistic conception was born. Darkness enveloped the world. Black clouds swept in, covering the sky. The repressive song suppressed the entire place. Many disciples of the Daozong Pavilion looked at Lian Yuqing. Was this the musical piece that their senior brother played? Lian Yuqing often played in the Daozong Pavilion, but they'd never heard this song before. They hadn't even heard this style before. In the past, Lian Yuqing played songs that made people feel comfortable, like bathing in the spring breeze. Even his musical sorcery had light and bright rhythms. However, this song was clearly different from the past. It was a dark style. Was this because of the battle 2 years ago? At the same time that he played, Yi Futian's fingers also strummed the strings. A bright and clear sound came out. It felt powerful and fanatic to the people. It immediately brought them into Yi Futian's artistic conception. That conception was wildness. At that moment he sat high up in the sky. Everyone in the world had to worship him. Black clouds covered the sky. Darkness enveloped the world. All the spiritual qi in the world was suppressed. Yi Futian's music was also about to be suppressed. In that dark world, there seemed to be only one song. Many long black spears seemed to appear in the artistic conception. The power of dark thunder ravaged the sky above Yi Futian's head. The swirling black clouds transformed into dark dragons. It was like the end of the world. Everything was being destroyed. Such repressive music. This dark artistic conception was created for destruction. Many of the disciples closed off their senses. Even still, they were still affected by it. They felt the artistic conception and could almost feel the suppressed anger within Lian Yuqing. It seemed to have melded into the music. Had the battle from 2 years ago really affected him this much? Yi Futian also felt how terrifying Lian Yuqing's music was. The song went into the mood immediately. It was muffled and repressive, as if it could squash him directly. The song also made one feel agitated and annoyed. It could affect their minds, making them unable to focus on playing and destroying their artistic conceptions. Yi Futian guarded his mind and continued to play without being affected. Spiritual qi screamed around him and the wild artistic conception continued. The air around him seemed to freeze, blocking the invasive attacks. He continued playing. His fingers sped up and the artistic conception grew stronger. It created the hallucination that Yi Futian was surrounded by an invisible force field. He was majestic and divine. People couldn't help but worship him. His musical sorcery was extremely penetrative and influential. When the artistic conception entered one's mind, they couldn't even dare to think about going against Yi Futian. It was very strange. The nine-fingered Guqin devil. Some powerful nobles stared at Yi Futian. The nine-fingered Guqin devil Lu Guangxing's music was known for being wild. It could steal one's mind and trick one's hearts. It was a terrifying song. The song they heard now might be from the nine-fingered Guqin devil Lu Guangxing, someone from the last generation's Baron Sky ranking. The two continued sitting quietly and playing. The two artistic conceptions grew stronger. The defensive power around Yi Futian seemed to get ravaged and destroyed. Lian Yuqing's song was highly destructive. It could even break apart spiritual qi and spiritual will. It made Yi Futian feel that Lian Yuqing had purposely composed this song after the battle to target Yukio. Yukio was known to counter all spells, but Lian Yuqing's current song was just as destructive. It was repressive and made one agitated and unable to control oneself. Faced with this kind of song, one couldn't play a powerful song according to one's thoughts if one's will wasn't strong enough. "I can't take it," an observer said. He felt as if his spiritual will was about to be destroyed. He wanted to free himself. What kind of song is it? Even Suke felt very uncomfortable. He guarded his mind, but he still had the urge to pull out his sword and kill someone. Suke was a grade 2 noble and was very talented. Even he couldn't stand the current situation. More and more people left the space. Even Lien Yuqing's expression changed. Yi Futian continued playing. A horrible spiritual windstorm seemed to gather in the air around him. It grew stronger and stronger. The white-clothed figure at the abyss side seemed to be bathed in endless light. He allowed the destructive power to go wild in his mind while he remained unmoving. The artistic conception of his song grew stronger until the attacking power seemed to meld into his own song. In addition, some of the weaker people no longer looked at Yi Futian with reverence. Instead, they were a bit lost. In their eyes, Yi Futian was like a god. They felt like their minds had been infected and they'd melded into his song's will. Lien Yuqing wanted to destroy. However, Yi Futian wanted to control. Many of the pavilion's prides were in pain. This musical sorcery battle was completely different from 2 years ago. On the battleground, Lien Yuqing seemed to still have the advantage. In reality, Yi Futian's artistic conception kept enlarging and strengthening. The light he was bathed in grew brighter too. The vast world harmonized with Yi Futian's song. Lien Yuqing's expression grew more and more uncomfortable. Of course, he felt that Yi Futian's cultivation and spiritual power was weaker than him, which was why he'd been using defense. But as time passed, his song kept strengthening while Lien Yuqing's song was getting attacked. This was the essence and artistic conception of musical sorcery. This was not all. Lien Yuqing also felt that something even more frightening was happening. His spiritual power was getting affected. It was gradually being invaded by Yi Futian's artistic conception. I don't believe this. Lien Yuqing cried out within. He played wildly. As if he'd given up on himself, he submerged himself completely into the song and started attacking Yi Futian as crazily as he could. His music penetrated everything and ravaged Yi Futian's spiritual will. Then it gradually grew lost. He felt his own will get corroded as he continuously lost himself. Time passed bit by bit. Lien Yuqing continued to play. Other than music, there was no other sound in the vast space. Even Lien Yuqing's movements seemed less spirited than before. It was not only him. Even the people who were listening on the sides seemed lost. Only those with higher cultivations could still see the current situation clearly. They felt a shocking spiritual windstorm wrap around the entire space. Yi Futian sat at the edge of the abyss. He was still handsome as he played the guqin quietly. But in many people's eyes, he was no longer a disciple of the pavilion. He was like a god. Snap the string, Yi Futian said quietly as he played with his head lowered. As soon as he spoke, Lien Yuqing yanked his finger back. There was a crisp sound of an instrument string snapping. He grunted and blood trickled out of his mouth. However, he seemed not to feel anything at all. It was as if Yi Futian's words had been an order. From now on, do not touch a guqin before me. You don't deserve to, Yi Futian said indifferently, raising his head. As soon as he spoke, his finger shook powerfully. Music echoed and the artistic conception scattered. As a result, their cultivation wasn't outstanding anymore. And now, it seemed that Lien Yuqing was going to repeat the same play. Countless eyes fell on the coming figure. Their hearts all pounded. Was he finally here? It was Shimin Hanjiang. He'd been the first place on law rank before Yi Futian and was now second place. Looking up at the approaching figure, Yi Futian said calmly, "Then why am I like that?" Bai Zhe had invited Hua Jieyu to cultivate with him in the Holy Ji Palace. Right before Yi Futian's eyes, Yun Feng had drawn Hua Jieyu. Seeing Yi Futian defeat Yun Feng, Lien Yuqing still dared to challenge Yi Futian and hurt him. Shimin Gu had flirted with Long Linger. No matter the reason, you shouldn't destroy their whole life. But you seemingly enjoy it very much, Shimin Hanjiang continued. Yi Futian laughed. He knew this kind of quarrel was meaningless. So he just responded calmly, "I haven't entered the sage plane, so I don't know the sage's thinking pattern. Since I am not a sage, I don't know why I should say thanks to those who hurt me. I just treat people the same way they treat me. You are not me. You don't know what happened between me and the others. What right do you have to tell me what to do?" Yi Futian smiled sarcastically and continued, If you are so noble, why did you come? Obviously, Shimin Hanjiang still couldn't let it go or he wouldn't have come. Then, how do you explain your arrogance over the palace's disciples? Shimin Hanjiang asked again. As a grade 3 noble, Yi Futian managed to gain the first place on the law rank. In the alchemy city, he defeated the city's first talent, Di Gang. Can anyone else in the palace do that? Doesn't he deserve first place? At this moment, lazy laughter was heard. Lying over there, Suke said slowly, "Is it so hard to admit another's excellence? Suke, you are the successor of Tingxua House. You are also a grade 2 noble. You can be a top talent among your generation in the barren state. Where's your pride?" Looking at Suke, Shimin Hanjiang sneered. He was taunting Suke for being Yi Futian's follower. Of course talents should have pride. But when meeting a truly excellent person, they should also learn to appreciate and follow them. As for those who just can't admit others' strengths, won't they feel more ashamed after being defeated? Many people looked up at Suke and the ones behind Yi Futian. People like Yusheng and Phoenix were all top talents of the palace, but they still chose to follow Yi Futian. It was said that even many other disciples at their level would also come to learn from Yi Futian. This might be out of admiration toward an excellent person. People are so strange. They envy those who are not much stronger than them but are more extraordinary. Maybe only when their enemy becomes extremely strong would they show their respect. But then it'll be too late. Zui Qianqiu also lay beside Suke drinking. They looked very relaxed. In the crowd below, Xiang Zhiqin and Yunfeng had the same feeling too. That figure in white had become so strong that they had to show their respect. The palace's disciples also began to exclaim. With his talent, Yi Futian was going to be the strongest existence on the barren sky list. No one would doubt that now. Shimin Hanjiang. Yi Futian looked down at Shimin Hanjiang and said, "If you came here just to attack my character, you can go now. I am myself. I don't need you to teach me. You don't have the qualification either." After Yi Futian spoke, the two stared at each other. Their forces seemed to collide. Yi Futian was right. Now he was first place. Shimin Hanjiang was only second place. Shimin Hanjiang didn't have the right to condemn Yi Futian. Go ahead. Shimin Hanjiang didn't argue further but directly announced a battle. A cold storm suddenly rolled over. Everyone felt the chill. The previous number 1 declared war to the present number 1. Who would be the winner? This war between the two top nobles of the Holy Ji Palace was going to pan out. Yi Futian stepped out. The wind blew through his dark hair. He looked at Shimin Hanjiang and said, "In the alchemy city, I'd experienced a top noble's strength. It won't be too hard this time. You just try your best." When fighting with Di Gang in Alchemy City, Yi Futian took the opportunity to break into the next plane. He had made great progress at that time. He knew what a top noble's level was like. Though he couldn't tell whether Shimin Hanjiang was stronger than Di Gang, there wouldn't be too big of a gap between the two. At least there was no doubt that Shimin Hanjiang would be weaker. Yi Futian didn't have to slowly test him. Both had won first place on the law rank. They knew that normal means couldn't help them defeat the other. "Good," said Shimin Hanjiang. Suddenly an extreme coldness appeared and the vast sky seemed to start snowing. Many people got chilled. They could feel that coldness penetrating their bones and souls. Their bodies seemed paralyzed and their brains almost stopped thinking. But this artistic conception was only aimed at Yi Futian, not them. It was hard to imagine how strong the mental pressure was that Yi Futian was facing. Yi Futian felt like he was in an icy world. Coldness kept invading his body while his body was burning. An enormous golden rock appeared. It grew larger and larger and finally turned into a real divine rock with golden wings. Yi Futian reached out his palms and endless golden spirit gathered into a long staff. Beams of horrible light projected from his body as well as from the golden rock. At this moment, Yi Futian seemingly owned endless power. However, a dreadful icy storm rolled over at this time. This storm seemed to be going to freeze everything. The wind brought by this storm blew like sharp swords. Strong power from the absolute territory appeared around Yi Futian, protecting his body with starry light. But then with a sharp colliding sound, that protection zone was shattered. The extreme coldness continued penetrating his body. Sage's intent, Yi Futian whispered. The space around him was totally frozen. His body was freezing bit by bit too. In the end, his body might be torn to pieces. Even if he had endless power, Yi Futian couldn't release it. Rustles sounded in his life palace. Yi Futian's brilliant body seemed to turn into a furnace. A horrible flaming power extended to every part of his body. Then the golden rock flapped its wings, flying up. Yi Futian twirled his long staff. A fantastic rhythm was contained in his moves. He seemed able to control the whole world. His staff technique was like a martial arts form. Martial intent appeared in that long staff and helped him gather a horrible martial intent storm. That storm became stronger and stronger, seemingly able to break everything. Disciples from the palace all looked up. The golden rock dancing in the icy world was such a beautiful scene. Chapter 651. The golden rock wings had a golden current flowing around them, cutting through the snow in the sky. A majestic martial arts aura surrounded Yi Futian, causing the force to be unable to suppress him. The golden rock wings had a golden current flowing around them, cutting through the snow in the sky. A majestic martial arts aura surrounded Yi Futian, causing the force to be unable to suppress him. Everyone could feel clearly how strong Yi Futian was. However, at that moment Shimin Hanjiang stepped forward. With just one step, the snow in the sky appeared to emit an icy glow. The falling snowflakes became as sharp as knives and turned into razor-sharp sword will, descending upon Yi Futian's body like silver rays of light. An even more horrifying storm rushed towards Yi Futian's body, each snowflake turning into a killing blade that was utterly cold, attempting to drown his body within the storm. Yi Futian's golden rock body became even more dazzling and his wings suddenly shook, cutting through the air and colliding with the killing blades. As he took a step forward, the polearm in his arm struck out. A single strike had the might to match the heavens and the air vibrated violently, shattering the countless blades. Shimin Hanjiang continued to move forward, an even stronger will being released from him. Yi Futian felt that it was hard to even move, but his movements did not stop and he continued to wave the polearm. The second strike swept through the air and an imposing force tore through the air towards Shimin Hanjiang. Shimin Hanjiang looked at the strong attack technique, then covered it with ice. The sword in his hand swung forward, splitting the icy area into two and Yi Futian's attack with it. At that moment, Yi Futian's body became exceedingly brilliant, and the third and fourth rod strikes continued to thrust downwards. The strikes were of the highest caliber, and the surrounding area was crushed. Shimin Hanjiang could feel the force, and his body transformed into a ray of light, disappearing in the air. He actually weaved and bobbed through the array of rod strikes because he could affect the flow of spiritual qi in the air, thereby affecting the speed of the other party's strikes and find its weakest points. Releasing his life spirit, Shimin Hanjiang came closer to Yi Futian. Similarly, the golden rock wings flapped and Yi Futian got closer to him. The both of them appeared to have absolute confidence in their abilities. When Yi Futian's fifth rod strike struck down, Shimin Hanjiang's life spirit projected an image, and the entire area turned into an ice world, affecting Yi Futian's every move. Shimin Hanjiang continued to not dodge, facing Yi Futian's strike head-on. The entire sky of rumbling shadows were all coated by a layer of ice, and Shimin Hanjiang's body appeared like a ray of light in front of one of the rod shadows and passed through it, swinging his sword towards Yi Futian's throat. At that moment, Yi Futian felt as though his entire body was about to stop moving. Not only did Shimin Hanjiang have the power of frost and exceptional swordsmanship, but he also had the ability to move at light speed. His sword did not have any specialty, but it was able to find the enemy's weakest point to pierce under his frost intent. His battles were often decided in one slash. Coupled with his ice power, this made him exceptionally terrifying. As he saw Shimin Hanjiang's ice-cold frost blade reaching, Yi Futian emotionlessly looked at him and said, "Sky freezing technique." The spell cast and the air appeared to have frozen. Shimin Hanjiang could feel the area around him solidifying. Not only that, but there was a horrifying martial arts will that was applying its pressure in the surrounding area. He released countless sword wills, attempting to cut through everything, but at that moment, the rock wings sliced the ice world apart and an immeasurable gravity crushed down upon him. At that moment, Shimin Hanjiang felt as though the weight of the entire world was crashing down with Yi Futian's rod strike. Shimin Hanjiang broke through Yi Futian's spell, but he could feel that his ice will was unable to stop the rod's power as their surroundings were grounded to powder. He could actually feel a semblance of sage plane power within. At that moment, Shimin Hanjiang understood that Yi Futian's rod technique had already reached that level. The same level as him. As his sword slashed out, brilliant sword rays flooded the heavens. However, under the rod strike they were all shattered. The crowd then heard a dull thud, and in the next moment, Shimin Hanjiang's body fell from the sky, and with a giant crash, slammed heavily onto the foot of the Battle Sage Palace and created a huge pit. The huge crash caused many people to shudder and look appallingly at the figure in the ground. Shimin Hanjiang and Yi Futian, 2 firsts in the admission examination, 2 firsts on the law rank. Yi Futian had entered 1 generation later than Shimin Hanjiang. However, he had defeated him in a one-on-one battle, and obtained first on the law rank in a dominant fashion. Yi Futian was the undisputed first on the law rank, be it by potential or battle ability. Even if he was only a grade 3 noble, he was still unrivaled in the noble plane. After today's battle, Yi Futian would be the undisputed first in the noble plane in the palace. Nobody would ever dare to question him again. Those who had scorned him and those who had questioned him would all shut up after today. To the Holy Ji Palace's disciples, it was the beginning of a new era, Yi Futian's era. Before him, even Hua Fan had not been this outstanding. It was probably only Bai Luli's era that could match Yi Futian's. If that was so, who among the 2 generations was more outstanding? Perhaps, he would really have the ability to challenge Bai Luli's position in the future. Watching the figure in the air, many people had mixed feelings. Perhaps the Holy Ji Palace was about to welcome its golden generation. Bai Luli, Hua Fan, Yi Futian and Yu Sheng. Every one of them was all incredibly outstanding. Bai Zhe, Zhuge Shimin Gu, and the other Sage Palace disciples were speechless. This was probably the first time the Sage Palace had been defeated so convincingly. This was also the first time that the Battle Sage Palace had broken the Sage Palace's streak and had its own era. Looking at the figures beside Yi Futian, he would lead his generation forward. Shimin Hanjiang stood up with difficulty and looked at Yi Futian in the air with a bad taste in his mouth. To Shimin Hanjiang, although he had exceptional potential, he had never been like Bai Luli and Yi Futian. In his year, he had much difficulty obtaining first in the admission examination. After he had entered the palace, there were a few strong competitors in his year, and many people had doubted him, claiming that he would not be able to rise to the top of the law rank, but he had done it. However, not long after, Yi Futian shot up through the ranks and knocked him off his pedestal, using him as a stepping stone, gathering the attention of the entire palace and becoming the symbol of his generation. Moreover, Shimin Hanjiang could predict that Yi Futian would be the first on the law rank for a long time. He had defeated him as a grade 3 noble, so in the time before he stepped into the sage plane, nobody would be able to challenge his position. Shimin Hanjiang did not say anything and turned around and left. He also understood that after today's battle, unless he entered the sage plane, he would forever be suppressed by Yi Futian. It has ended, many people thought in their hearts. The battle for the law rank had finally ended, but many people felt that it was insufficient and could not bear to leave. Yi Futian, someone called out at that moment. Yi Futian turned and looked at the person. The person who had spoken was the 8th on the law rank. He looked towards Yi Futian and asked, Di Gang and Shimin Hanjiang, who is stronger? The Holy Ji Palace was a holy ground for cultivation in the barren state, where geniuses gathered from all around. However, it did not mean that the Holy Ji Palace's disciples were always the strongest in the state. There were people like Di Gang, Huang Zhouge, and many others who were also very strong. In a direct confrontation, Di Gang is stronger, Yi Futian replied. He was not belittling Shimin Hanjiang but simply telling the truth. Many people were surprised. If Shimin Hanjiang was first on the law rank, they would be inferior to the alchemy city's Di Gang. However, now that Yi Futian had reached the top, there were probably no noble plane cultivators in the barren state that could defeat him. Moreover, this was at the current moment. If he broke through to a grade 2 or even grade 1 noble, there would be no question. He would be invincible among the noble plain in the barren state. The crowd started to leave gradually. Today's storm had arisen because of Yi Futian's arrogant words. But he had proven that he had the right to say those words. Some of those who were on good terms with Yi Futian did not leave but continued standing by his side. Suke smiled and said, "Should we celebrate?" Yi Futian glared at him and laughed, saying, "I was originally the first on the law rank. What is there to celebrate? Moreover, I'm not really interested in being first." "You're now first, so whatever you say is correct," Suke said with a fake smile. Yi Futian's words made him really want to beat him up, saying he was not interested after getting first. Of course, this feeling is actually quite refreshing. Yi Futian rubbed his brow, then smiled brightly. At least, the people who doubted him in the Holy Ji Palace would shut up. Nobody would gossip about him when he and Jieyu walked on the road. There would only be envy. As he thought about it, he felt delighted. It seemed that he was also a Philistine. "I really want to hit someone," Zui Qianqiu said. "Then do it." Suke smiled and looked at him. "But what do I do if I can't defeat him?" Zui Qianqiu lamented. "Then just drink," came the reply. Hua Jieyu held Yi Futian's hand and both smiled at each other. Yi Futian had used 3 years to finally prove himself, reaching first on the law rank in a dominant fashion. From now on, the entire barren state would know his name and nobody would ever question his potential again. She felt happy for him too. Not long after, in the law battle area, many people gathered before the law rank, wanting to see the newly updated law rank. As expected, an elder from the palace came to renew the law rank soon. Yi Futian's first place ranking was impossible to challenge. Following that, they saw the name on the second of the law rank. Although many people had their guesses, they were still astonished when they saw the law rank renewed. Yu Sheng was second on the law rank behind Yi Futian. Shimin Hanjiang had fallen from the first on the law rank to the third. Many people took a deep breath. These two prodigies had entered the palace only 3 years ago, and were now ranked first and second on the law rank. This was like a miracle. Their generation had created 2 heroes who stood side by side. Due to Yu Sheng flying through the ranks, many people even failed to realize that Lian Yuqing's position on the law rank had fallen yet again. Chapter 652. In the blink of an eye, a couple of months had passed. After Yi Futian and Shimin Hanjiang's battle, the palace had regained its usual composure. The law rank been updated, and nobody questioned the first and second placing. In the blink of an eye, a couple of months had passed. After Yi Futian and Shimin Hanjiang's battle, the palace had regained its usual composure. The law rank been updated, and nobody questioned the first and second placing. Gradually, everyone started to treat it normally. Yi Futian had become the symbol of the disciples of his generation, admired by many. The majority of those in the same batch as Yi Futian all respected him. They had all seen how Yi Futian had secured his position at the top of the Holy Ji Palace with just a few battles. On top of that, the disciples who had just entered the palace also admired him after hearing Yi Futian's stories. This senior of theirs was like a legendary figure writing his own story, charting his own growth. The name mentioned the most in the palace was Yi Futian's name. However, Yi Futian did not care that much. He continued to cultivate in silence, and everyone understood that Yi Futian's top priority was his cultivation. He had reached the top of the law rank too quickly, obtaining first on the law rank when he was a grade 3 noble, so he still needed a fair amount of cultivation before he could enter the Sage Hall. Apart from his cultivation, there were often disciples from the same batch who visited Yi Futian to consult him on cultivation matters. If he had the time, Yi Futian would give them some pointers. This caused the bolder new disciples to also go to him for pointers, causing Yi Futian to be unable to relax in his free time. Many new disciples who had been taught by Yi Futian felt that they had learned a lot, causing them to admire Yi Futian's strength even more. This caused Yi Futian's reputation in the palace to reach another high, far surpassing the previous first on the law rank, Shimin Hanjiang. At that moment, in the Battle Sage Palace at Yi Futian's cultivation area, there were 2 beautiful young ladies bidding goodbye to Yi Futian, saying, "Thank you, Brother Yi. If the chance arises, we will come and learn from Brother Yi again." Sure. Yi Futian smiled and nodded. Brother, if we come and drop by next time, you can't complain that we are talkative. The other lady also smiled brilliantly and said. Yi Futian nodded again. The two of them then smiled and left. When they left the Battle Sage Palace, one of the girls smiled and said, Brother Yi not only has exceptional potential, but he is handsome and also so approachable. Yup, indeed, he's not like the rumors at all. It's hard to imagine that Brother Yi would say such arrogant words at the Battle Sage Palace. The other girl recalled the rumors circulating around the palace about Yi Futian and replied. Back then, Yi Futian had ignored all the people who doubted him in the palace and never looked them in the eye. When he's arrogant, he's unparalleled, but usually he's amiable and refined. The girl beside her had a look of infatuation and said, Little Yen, I feel like I'm in love. The girl beside gave her a look of disgust and said scornfully, You're the daughter from an elite clan. How can you be this starry-eyed? What kind of person are you? Brother Yi is mine. Why don't you die? Their gleeful banter continued as they moved further and further, but in reality, they both knew that Yi Futian and Hua Jieyu were a perfect match. Moreover, beside Brother Yi there were other alluring beauties like Phoenix, Yun Shuixing and a few others. On the other end, Yi Futian let out a sigh. He was a little troubled. Because he had the habit of giving the palace's disciples pointers, there were a few disciples in the same batch as him that looked for him for help. However, after the news spread, more and more people started to visit him for guidance. He was the most well-known person in the palace after all. What are you sighing about? Beside him, Yi Xiaoshi asked. Yi Futian looked at Yi Xiaoshi and said, Being handsome is also troublesome. It's a feeling that seventh brother will never understand. Oh, the fatty's face turned black and he glared at Yi Futian and said, I'm breaking off our relations. Yi Futian shrugged his shoulders. Trying to scare him? The next time Jieyu comes, I need to have a good chat with her. Little brother seems to be teaching more and more little sisters. Yi Xiaoshi stared at Yi Futian. Yi Futian looked speechlessly at Yi Xiaoshi and retorted, Fatty, have a conscience. Did I say anything wrong? There are a few little sisters that have come quite often, am I right? The fatty grinned and looked at Yi Futian. Brother, we're all brothers. There's always room for discussion. Which little sister do you like? I'll introduce you. Yi Futian smiled and said, hugging Yi Xiaoshi by the shoulder in an intimate manner. Yi Xiaoshi's eyeballs rolled in their sockets and he replied, You can introduce them to me one by one. It's good to have more interaction. Oh. Yi Futian looked at Yi Xiaoshi in dismay. This was the fatty's true self, how shameless. I didn't expect that brother was this kind of person, he said grudgingly. I learned it from someone. Yi Xiaoshi looked disdainfully at Yi Futian. This bastard showing off in front of him all the time. If it wasn't because he couldn't defeat him, he would have beat him up a long time ago. It looks like I need to reconsider our relationship, Yi Futian sighed and said. Yi Xiaoshi gave him a look of contempt. Futian, at that moment a voice sounded out. Yi Futian and Yi Xiaoshi turned around and saw Hua Jiyu running towards them. Yi Xiaoshi had an interesting look on his face. Speak of the devil. However, he soon realized that Hua Jiyu's expression was off and his expression changed to one of concern. What happened? Yi Futian naturally realized that Hua Jiyu's expression was off and asked. There's trouble. Hua Jiyu walked over to Yi Futian with a glum expression. Yi Futian's heart sank. Jiyu had never behaved like this before. For her to be this worried, there was evidently huge trouble. Could it be the Eastern Barren territory? Second sister is in trouble, Hua Jiyu replied. Second sister. Yi Futian and Yi Xiaoshi were both stunned for a second. Jiyu, what happened? Yi Futian saw that Jiyu was extremely worried and flustered. I heard news from the Sage Palace. A few days ago, the Sage Palace's elders and the White Cloud City's experts went to the Zhuge family for Bai Luli to propose marriage to the Zhuge family. Both parties had a happy discussion, and it is very likely that the marriage will go through. Bai Zhe and Zhuge Xing are both planning to head to the Zhuge family. The news was spread by them, perhaps intentionally, Hua Jiyu said. Although she had never officially joined the cottage, she was often at the cottage and was later brought to the Zhuge family by Zhuge Mingyue. Zhuge Mingyue treated her like a younger sister and gave the best to her. That was why, to her, Zhuge Mingyue was not only Yi Futian's sister, but she was also her own sister. She also knew that the cottage had a tacit couple, Zhuge Mingyue and Gu Donglu. She had been by Zhuge Mingyue's side for quite some time, so she naturally knew some of Zhuge Mingyue's secrets. Now, such a piece of news had spread. She wondered how Zhuge Mingyue was feeling. Have they not given up on what happened back then? Yi Futian's expression immediately became extremely grim, his tone full of displeasure. It was rumored that second sister had run away and was taken in by their master to the cottage to escape her marriage. That would mean that when second sister was younger, the Zhuge family had already suggested marriage to the White Cloud City, but it was terminated due to her leaving home. Now the White Cloud City's young city lord Bai Luli was a legendary figure who was 10th on the Barren Sky ranking, while sister had similarly entered the Sage Plane. Their marriage should be theirs to decide. So why were the elders bringing up and interfering in such an old matter? Why is the palace interfering in this matter? Yi Futian was furious and puzzled. The Holy Ji Palace was a holy land for cultivation and disregarded happenings in the outside world. Otherwise, the palace had disciples from all major clans. If a clan broke into a war, how would the palace handle it? Why would the palace interfere with Bai Luli and his sister's matters? He did not understand. I don't know. Hua Jieyu shook her head, equally puzzled as to why the palace would take a stance. Even if Bai Luli was an elite genius and acknowledged as the successor of the Holy Ji Palace, the palace should not have to go to the extent of interfering with Bai Luli's path companion. It's too quick, Yi Futian suddenly said. Hua Jieyu and Yi Shaoshi looked at him with confused expressions. At the start of the year, during the admission examination, sister watched the battles while chatting with me. At that time I could already feel that she had matters troubling her. I tried to hint to her that I would grow stronger quickly, but it still happened too quickly, Yi Futian said. Now, he had already proven himself as the first on the law rank, invincible in the noble plane, and had obtained the right to enter the Sage Hall. However, he had evidently not surpassed Bai Luli's position in the palace. If he was given just one more year, he could definitely do it. However, everything had progressed too quickly. Perhaps sister had already predicted it at the start of the year, which was why she was troubled. There has been no news of third brother. I wonder where he has gone. Yi Shaoshi was also worried. In the cottage, big brother, second sister and third brother were like their elders and the cottage's faith. Now that something like this had happened, how could they not worry? Back then, third brother challenged Bai Luli and failed. He's definitely trying to improve his cultivation. However, Bai Luli is cultivating in the Holy Ji Palace, so third brother would have to take unconventional means to surpass him. He must have gone to an extremely dangerous place, Hua Jieyu guessed. Yi Futian nodded. Bai Luli was renowned in the Barren State. His reputation would definitely be deserved. Even Di Gang and Shiman Hanjiang, elite geniuses in the Barren State, had Bai Luli as their target. Prepare to head to the Zhuge family, Yi Futian said, leaving the area. Where are you going? Yi Shaoshi asked. I'm going to find master and ask him why the palace has interfered in this matter, Yi Futian replied, walking in the direction of the Battle Sage Palace's Battle Sage Hall. Futian. Outside the ancient hall, Yi Futian met Sage Jingang and his brother Do Kuan, uncle master brother. Yi Futian called out to them, I have a favor to ask of master. Regarding your sister? Sage Jingang asked Yi Futian. Yi Futian was stunned. He did not expect that Sage Jingang would guess it. Yes, Yi Futian nodded and replied. Futian, don't interfere in this matter, Sage Jingang said. Yi Futian's expression froze. Evidently, his uncle master also knew what was happening. The Holy Ji Palace's palace lord, the first on the Barren Sky ranking, was actually severely injured with his life at risk. This matter was extremely shocking. Just like your uncle master said, countless influential figures in the Barren State have met with difficulties on the divine path. The other people in the palace, including me, might end up walking the palace lord's path, but the palace needs hope. This hope is by Luli. That is why, even though we may know that we are wrong, the palace continues to do so. Sage Dozhan continued, not only does the palace know this, but the White Cloud City knows it, the Zhuge family leader knows it as well. The land is huge and there is far more than just the barren state. You may not have come into contact with it yet, but now, if the barren state does not produce a saint, it may be impossible to maintain the situation as it is. Sage Dozhan's voice was serious and sounded exceptionally dignified. The Wanxiang Palace had once predicted his life. He would meet a calamity, but he did not think of it. When his cultivation reached his current level, his state of mind had already reached a level where he had insight into all the world's happenings. Now he only had 3 obsessions. One was to break through to the saint level, however there was little hope for this. The second was for the barren state to have a saint in the current generation, and not be restricted by others. Third was an obsession that he did not have previously. Now he hoped that his disciples Yi Futian and Yushang could one day reach that level as well. The barren state has its threats as well? Yi Futian heard Sage Dozhan's words and thought. He looked towards his master and said, if Bai Luli is unable to do it, I will. Sage Dozhan and Sage Jingang stared at Yi Futian. His brilliant star-like eyes were filled with determination and confidence. This law rank first that had once looked down on the entire palace's geniuses had already demonstrated his unparalleled potential. Sage Dozhan also had the hope that he would compete with Bai Luli in the future to see who was more outstanding. You were born 10 years too late. Sage Dozhan replied, if you were in the same generation as Bai Luli, we would be able to see who is more exceptional. Of course, if you were in Bai Luli's position, the palace would do our best to support you to join the Zhuge family. Since you have the will of the Kuanpeng, you would do well to cultivate now. When the time is right, enter the sage hall to cultivate and step into the sage plane. Then, you will be able to have a say in the palace. Even though Yi Futian had exceptional potential and was the first among the palace's noble plane disciples, when considering the entire Holy Ji Palace, he was still unable to influence its decisions. For noble plane cultivators, their only goal was to cultivate. I want to go to the Zhuge family. Yi Futian looked at Sage Dozhan and said. If he was in the palace's shoes, perhaps he could understand their decision, but in his own shoes, he could not. This involved second sister and third brother. His second sister would definitely want to be with his third brother. This was his obsession. When he was 18, the white-robed scholar had personally descended upon the Kangyi kingdom and invited and brought him to the Eastern Barren Territory's cottage. From then their fates were already intertwined. Sage Dozhan heard Yi Futian's words and stared at him. He could feel the determination in Yi Futian's expression. He then said, since your obsession is that strong, go. Thank you, master. Yi Futian bowed slightly and took his leave. Watching the leaving figure, Sage Dozhan sighed and said, it's good to be young. Sage Jingang had a bitter smile as he shook his head, saying, brother, if you let him go like this, isn't it going to create trouble? Cultivation is about training the mind. If I make him stay and not allow him to leave, it will cause a rift in his state of mind. Since he wants to try it, let's just let him, Sage Dozhan replied. When they were young and wild, there were some things they needed to do. Whether he could make it or not would just be part of Yi Futian's experience. Yi Futian was the first on the law rank. Lu Chan had invited all 6 palaces to discuss this and permit Yi Futian to enter the Sage Hall. This was why he was not worried that Yi Futian would be injured. In the Holy Ji Palace, any disciple that had the right to enter the Sage Hall represented the future of the barren state. With regards to this point, the Sage Palace naturally understood. When Yi Futian returned to his residence, Hua Jieyu and Yi Shaoshi were there waiting for him. Seeing Yi Futian return, Yi Shaoshi asked him, how is it? Let's go to the Zhuge family. We'll talk along the way. Yi Futian replied and took out his flying boat ritual implement. Yi Futian, Hua Jieyu, Yi Shaoshi, and Yusheng stepped onto the flying boat and flew through the air. He did not bring anyone else. This was his second sister's matter, and had nothing to do with the others. In the northern region of the barren state that was bordering the central region, there was a city with an illustrious history, Xuanwu City. The Zhuge family was located in Xuanwu City. Although Xuanwu City had many clans, The Zhuge family was the #1 clan in Xuanwu City and had stood tall for thousands of years. It had absolute authority in the ancient Xuanwu City. The Zhuge family was located on the Crouching Dragon Mountain. The entire Crouching Dragon Mountain had only one family. The surface of the mountain was littered with cloud stairwells and ancient halls, just like a palace that went up, level by level. If one stood in the middle of the city and raised their head, they could feel a solemn aura from it. At the moment, the Zhuge family was extremely crowded with guests. A short time ago, the Holy Ji Palace and White Cloud City experts had all come over to the Zhuge family, causing a commotion in Xuanwu City. All the clans and sects had come over to visit, creating a spectacular event. The White Cloud City and Zhuge family's joint marriage was definitely an event that made the barren state shake. The joint marriage should have been set many years ago, but because of Zhuge Mingyue's willfulness, she left the house in objection. However, much time had passed and the White Cloud City's young city lord Bai Luli was already a genius whose name resounded across the entire barren state. Zhuge Mingyue was also beautiful and had exceptional potential, so everyone supported this marriage and felt that it was a match made in heaven. However, many of the barren state clan's daughters would be sad after this. At that moment, outside the Zhuge family, there was a flying boat that flew in like a ray of light, heading towards the core of the Zhuge family on the Crouching Dragon Mountain. Chapter 654. In the vast wilderness of the westernmost region of the barren state, there were still some small towns with small populations. At the moment, there were a group of youths walking on the road in one of these towns. The wind blew above them, prompting many to look up at the sky. A silhouette was seen flashing by at a frightening speed, moving like a bolt of lightning. In the vast wilderness of the westernmost region of the barren state, there were still some small towns with small populations. At the moment, there were a group of youths walking on the road in one of these towns. The wind blew above them, prompting many to look up at the sky. A silhouette was seen flashing by at a frightening speed, moving like a bolt of lightning. "What is that?" one of those young people stopped and asked, as they felt a terrifying gust of wind blew by. "Seems like a person." "That was some uncommon speed. What plane is required for one to be capable of doing that?" "Anyone saw who that was?" "I saw nothing but a blurred shadow. Seems like some handsome scholar dressed in white." The group chatted away in curiosity. A group of people descended right outside the town in the same amount of time for an incense to finish burning. They stood right above the arch outside the town, dressed in luxurious clothing. All of them had incredibly sharp eyes. It was as if they were going to pierce whatever they were looking at far away. Everyone who passed felt a shudder. The aura emanating from those people was so terrifying that even just a small glance was capable of making people tremble in their core. There were few mighty ones to be found in such remote places, and anyone of noble plane was seen as the most fearsome there was. The weakest among the group outside the town was far stronger than the strongest of the locals. "Where is this place?" An exceptional-looking young man standing in the middle of the group asked everyone around him. "We are now outside Yu State, within the borders of the barren state," a mighty one beside him said. "That fellow sure knows how to run." The young man's eyes sparkled with a tinge of murderous intent as he said coldly, "But anyone who dares take something from me, I'll make sure to get them even if I have to follow them to hell." There seems to have been no one who has become a saint in the barren state over the past few years, no? Indeed. The one beside him nodded. "Keep searching," the young man said coldly. The ones who followed him continued their search. They had chased their target all the way from Yu State into the barren state. The Zhuge family's estate on Crouching Dragon Mountain was vast and extremely grand. Many saw Futian, Hua Jieyu, and the rest of the party along the way. They naturally all knew Hua Jieyu, however, despite having spent years in the Zhuge family. Hua Jieyu was not all that familiar with the members of the family. She spent almost all of her time with Zhuge Mingyue when she was not training, keeping interactions with the rest of the family to a minimum. Many young, talented ones from the Zhuge family wanted to win her heart, but Zhuge Mingyue stopped all of their advances without mercy, giving them no chance at all. The news of Hua Jieyu's return spread quickly among the members of the family. Many came to know that Hua Jieyu was about to return, along with the one who ranked first on law rank, Yi Futian. Hua Jieyu took Yi Futian and the rest of the party to the moon tower, where Zhuge Mingyue lived, but they were not able to see her. They knew from the servant girl that she went to meet the head of the family. So they headed right for the palace where the head of the Zhuge family lived. Yi Futian was able to feel the deep-seated power of a millennium-old clan along the way. The place looked like a small city in itself, and there were so many mighty ones among the members of the clan that they were seen everywhere. However, Yi Futian was not in the mood to explore such thoughts. They moved upward and came right outside the palace where Zhuge Qingfeng lived. They were servant girls standing guard outside. Hua Jieyu went up and asked, "Is Miss Mingyue in the Wind residence? Please wait here. I will inform them of your arrival." The servant bowed as she said. The Wind residence was the palace where Zhuge Qingfeng lived, and as such it was not a place where people were allowed to come and go as they pleased. Only the sons and daughters of the lord of the place were allowed direct entry. Understood. Yi Futian and Hua Jieyu waited there. The servant girl returned moments later and informed Hua Jieyu with a smile, "Ms. Mingyue would like you to wait for her in the moon tower. She will attend to you shortly." Hua Jieyu's expression turned rather peculiar. Her second sister definitely knew why she had come all the way from the Holy Ji Palace. If things were how they used to be, Zhuge Mingyue would come to greet her personally. However, Zhuge Mingyue was apparently occupied with some matters in the Wind residence. Yi Futian, without a doubt, was able to sense something was amiss and frowned in response. "Let's wait for her at her place then," Hua Jieyu said gently to Yi Futian. "Yeah." Yi Futian nodded. There was nothing else to be done about it. He had come all the way to see his second sister, wanting to know what second sister thought. The group turned around and left, heading for Moon Tower. Everyone was discussing the wedding of Bai Luli and Zhuge Mingyue along the way. Those voices were heard right from the very moment they arrived at the estate. It was as if the entire clan was talking about this and nothing else. The chatter was not limited to the estate, as even all of Xuanwu City was seen discussing the matter in a frenzied manner. The news had spread all across the barren state. A group of people was seen walking towards them from the opposite direction. The group was chatting among themselves but halted their steps as soon as they saw Yi Futian, Hua Jieyu, and the rest of the party. Things went silent abruptly as the other group laid eyes on Yi Futian's party. Yi Futian scanned the group before him. He hardly knew anyone among them, but there were several familiar faces. Bai Zhe of White Cloud City, Zhuge Xing, Zhuge Ping, and the rest from the Zhuge family. Everyone else he did not know was probably a member of either the Zhuge family or White Cloud City. "Jieyu, you are back." Zhuge Xing looked at Hua Jieyu and said as if he was welcoming her home. Everyone from the Zhuge family knew that Zhuge Xing had thoughts for Hua Jieyu before, and thus they did not feel anything peculiar about his attitude. They even wished that the two would end up together someday, and had never expected to have simply nurtured a divine spiritual sorcerer of heavenly grace and looks for Yi Futian instead. Many of the Zhuge family felt very displeased at that turn of events. Furthermore, when the Holy Ji Palace was doing their recruitment drive 3 years ago, several from the Zhuge family clashed with Yi Futian, with Zhuge Xing being one of them. All who fought Yi Futian suffered a crushing defeat. That, coupled with the matter with Hua Jieyu, made Yi Futian a thorn in the sides of many of the younger generation of the clan. After all, many of them yearned for someone like Hua Jieyu at one point or another. Bai Zhe glared at the person before him. They had been the ones to leak the news from the Holy Ji Palace. It was rather unexpected for Yi Futian to become restless and come all the way to the Zhuge family's estate. Where they stood at the moment was not the Holy Ji Palace. Bai Zhe was curious as to what Yi Futian could accomplish coming all the way there. With the wedding of his brother Bai Luli and Zhuge Mingyue underway, Hua Jieyu did not bother addressing Zhuge Xing. When Zhuge Xing made impertinent remarks back in the law battles, she already told Zhuge Xing to stay away from her. "Yi Futian, what are you doing here in the Zhuge family's estate?" Zhuge Ping, who was standing beside Zhuge Xing, asked. He was eliminated from the competition by the hands of Yi Futian back in the law battles, forfeiting his right to enter the Holy Ji Palace altogether. "And who would you be?" Yi Futian glanced at Zhuge Ping and asked plainly. "You." Zhuge Ping's expression was cold. Is he really ignoring me? I seem to recall something now. There was one boisterous fellow back in the law battles with little to show despite having quite a big mouth. How are you doing now with your training? Yi Futian asked with a smirk. Zhuge Ping's face turned ashen and he grunted. He had nothing to retort with. Yi Futian was, after all, the number one on law rank. Everyone from the Zhuge family glared at Yi Futian. The champion of the law rank was indeed as insolent as the rumors described. Even being inside the grounds of the Zhuge family, he had no qualms of insulting their members in front of everyone. Please, what are you all doing? Bai Zhe said with a bright smile. My brother's wedding with the second daughter of the Zhuge family will be held soon. Since Yi Futian is the little brother of the second sister, he has, of course, here to congratulate her. There is no need to be so serious. Idiot. Yi Futian glanced at Bai Zhe, giving him no face. Bai Zhe's smile was literally frozen in place as he went to stare at Yi Futian with cold eyes. Not smiling now, are you? Yi Futian smirked sarcastically. He had no time nor the mood to play along with Bai Zhe. His objective was a simple one. He was not about to let his second sister marry Bai Luli. Your brother Bai Luli is no match for my second sister. I object to the wedding, Yi Futian said coldly. Many looked startled at Yi Futian's words. Bai Luli was the top genius in the Holy Ji Palace and a figure ranked 10th on the Barren Sky ranking. Even though Yi Futian became the number one on the law rank and permitted entry to the Sage Hall, he was just another top-notch genius after Bai Luli. He seemed to have no right to say what he just said. Yi Futian was free to dispute Bai Zhe, but there was simply no woman who deemed Bai Luli to be beneath them. Even the members of the Zhuge family acknowledged that much. As such, everyone looked forward to the wedding. Bai Zhe looked at Yi Futian coldly. My brother having no right to marry her? If it were not for certain reasons, he might have even thought that it was Zhuge Mingyue who was a poor choice for his brother. The wedding doesn't seem like one you can object to, Zhuge Xing said coldly. Furthermore, Bai Luli is ranked 10th on the Barren Sky ranking. He would be a perfect couple with Mingyue. Everyone in the Zhuge family, and the Xuanwu looks forward to it. Indeed, the second daughter of the Zhuge family is exceptional in both looks and training. But Bai Luli is your senior studying under the Holy Ji Palace and a mighty one like no other. How can you be insolent? Some members of the Zhuge family said smugly. Yi Futian had taken Hua Jieyu away from them, and they were not going to tolerate him getting in the way of Bai Luli and Zhuge Mingyue's wedding. Just because his older brother wants to get his hands on yet another proud daughter from the Zhuge family? That is just hilarious. You are probably the only one in all of the Barren State talking like this. My brother, not fit to marry Ms. Mingyue, Bai Zhe said sarcastically. That is a given, Yi Futian replied with utmost seriousness. Regardless of how excellent and exceptional Bai Luli was, and even if he came to rank first on the Barren Sky ranking, there was still only one person who deserved his second sister, and that was his third brother. No one else was fit to marry her. There were no other reasons for it. The only reason that mattered was that his second sister had his third brother. You're funny indeed, Bai Zhe said sarcastically. I'm not being funny, Yi Futian glared at Bai Zhe, but it's not like I expect a self-righteous guy like you to ever understand something like that. Well, I'm probably wasting too much time talking to an idiot here. Let's go. Yi Futian began walking away. Bai Zhe was practically in a rage with his fists clenched tight. Yi Futian never ceased humiliating him. It was as if he was nothing in the eyes of Yi Futian. The group saw Yi Futian's party leave. The eyes of Bai Zhe and Zhuge Xing were extremely cold. However, given Yi Futian's current status, they knew that they were no match for him. Second sister, third brother must have been held back by something, Hua Jieyu said as she took a seat beside Zhuge Mingyue, holding her arm as she did. Definitely. Yi Futian nodded. Third brother fought Bai Luli back then for you, but he lost. Third brother must have been traveling to hone his skills. He knew it wasn't easy to beat Bai Luli. He might have been caught up in something or was just someplace far away. Did I say anything about wanting him to beat Bai Luli? Zhuge Mingyue asked Yi Futian with a smile. Yi Futian was at a loss for words. Seeing Zhuge Mingyue's bright, beautiful eyes, he came to realize that perhaps his third brother had been wrong. He never showed up for the past 5 or 6 years. He vanished right after that one battle. He knew nothing. Zhuge Mingyue continued. I have said yes to father. The Zhuge family will be making the announcement about my engagement soon, and I'd like to see if he will bother showing up. Yi Futian looked at his second sister, then turned to look at Hua Jieyu. He came to realize something with a shudder. He came to realize that he might have been wrong all this time. She knew well what his second sister was like. She had a unique personality and knew what she loved and hated. She had shown her extreme stubbornness by running away from home all those years back. She liked his third brother, and there was no way she would have cared if his third brother ended up defeating Bai Luli. She would not have cared at all, so long as third brother bothered showing up at the Zhuge family. However, his third brother was also prideful and stubborn, as well as an extremist who needed to see reason in everything he did. Third brother wanted to protect second sister, and it was a given that he did not want her to suffer any indignation. As such, he challenged Bai Luli. He wanted to defeat Bai Luli not because he wanted to prove his strength, but to show the Zhuge family and the world that he was capable of protecting second sister. He did not want second sister to carry the family's burden. As such, third brother went away for years without bothering to show up even once. Two individuals with distinct personalities and a strong sense of self came to like each other. But Yi Futian wanted to say something, but he was not able to find the words. But what? Zhuge Mingyue smiled and added, that idiot knows nothing. And since he knows nothing, I'll show him the way. I've agreed to it with the clan. I will be wed to Bai Luli in a month, and a banquet will be held for guests from all over Baron State. Second sister, what if third brother really got held back by something? Yi Futian asked in frustration. Something that took him 5 or 6 years. Was he really thinking of never showing up if he couldn't beat Bai Luli? Zhuge Mingyue said. She had waited for 5 to 6 years. She was not asking much of him. She only needed him to show up. However, that idiot never understood things so simple. Yi Futian was rendered completely speechless. 5 or 6 years was indeed too long of a time to wait. Just where the hell was third brother now? Second sister. Just what if third brother never shows up in the end? Yi Futian felt his voice trembling as he asked. If third brother does not show up, is second sister really going to get engaged to Bai Luli? If things turn out like that, your second sister will have to be generous and sacrifice herself for a bit to have a saint appear in the Baron State then. Yi Futian frowned at Zhuge Mingyue's words and felt rather irked. It was not his second sister herself that had him feeling irked, but that one line she had just uttered, sacrificing herself to have a saint appear in the Baron State. The Holy Ji Palace, the Zhuge family, White Cloud City, and many others in the Baron State have had high hopes for something like that happening. While his second sister looked nonchalant about it all, having both the Holy Ji Palace and White Cloud City showing up at the family's door to propose, and with reasons from her own family, it was obvious that his second sister was under tremendous pressure. Having a saint appear in Baron State or not, what does it have to do with my second sister? Yi Futian thought. I'm still not going to agree to this, Yi Futian said as he looked at his second sister. Zhuge Mingyue smiled at him, thinking that his little brother had indeed grown up. She stood up and looked at Yi Futian, before rubbing and patting his head for a bit, saying with a smile, it seems like our little brother is getting more and more assertive. But just leave the matter between your second sister here and that idiot to us, okay? But second sister. Hua Jieyu walked up too. Zhuge Mingyue held her hand and put it on Yi Futian's before saying gently, sometimes I really admire both of you. At the very least, our little brother is not some slowpoke like some idiot out there. He might be thick-skinned, but he sure is amusing. Yi Futian held Hua Jieyu's hand and said to his second sister, well then, I guess I'll just stay here. Very well, you can stay here for as long as you like. I haven't talked to you guys for quite a while after all. One gets rather nostalgic when one gets old, and I'm really starting to miss the cottage. Zhuge Mingyue smiled and said, our second sister here still looks like a fairy. What is this getting old you are talking about? Yi Futian asked, looking at Zhuge Mingyue. He was exaggerating. Zhuge Mingyue's looks and bearing had always been exceptional. Furthermore, cultivators possessed very long lifespans, especially those who made it to the sage plane. As such, there was hardly any hint of age on Zhuge Mingyue, and she actually looked more stunning now than she had back in the cottage. If only that idiot was as good with words as you are, little brother, Zhuge Mingyue said with a bright smile. She turning around and said, Xing'er, have someone down there prepare some drinks and food. We haven't sat down and chatted for a very long time. Will do. Beiteng Xing'er nodded. Well, too bad fifth brother isn't here. Zhuge Mingyue thought of Luo Fan, and she missed the dishes her fifth brother whipped up, despite him being rather insufferable all the time. The moon tower exuded a tranquil beauty under the moonlit night sky. They sat around and ate away. However, every single one of them seemed to be troubled by something. While they were indeed chatting with each other, they kept getting spaced out every so often. Second sister, have some more. Yi Futian put more food into Zhuge Mingyue's bowl. Zhuge Mingyue said in response, go look after Jieyu instead. I'm fine. I hear Futian talk about things back in the cottage all the time, and it's always something about third brother putting more food in your bowl while you never batted an eye at him. Come to think of it, that would be rather amusing, Hua Jieyu said with a smile. Zhuge Mingyue smiled at the duo who seemed like they were finishing each other's sentences. She put down her chopsticks and said, I'm done and will be going for a walk. You guys go on. She stood up and left. Hua Jieyu looked rather dejected seeing Zhuge Mingyue leave. She turned around and asked Yi Futian, did I say something wrong? I don't think so. Yi Futian said with a smile. It seems like our second sister misses third brother. Just leave her alone for now. Right? Hua Jieyu nodded. Sister Xing'er. Just what the hell is going on? Yi Futian asked Beiteng Xing'er. Second sister here might not be saying anything, but she indeed misses third brother very much. But then again, you know what third brother is like. How long would it actually take if he insists on beating Bai Luli? Beiteng Xing'er continued. Bai Luli is a chosen one in the Holy Ji Palace. You know better than I do what his talents are like. Just like second sister said, is third brother really not going to show up until the day he defeats Bai Luli? Second sister is indeed under a lot of pressure with this matter. Mighty ones from the Holy Ji Palace and White Cloud City came, and everyone wanted Bai Luli to end up with second sister. Even all the forces in Xuanwu City thought so. It seems to the world at least that it would be perfect to have White Cloud City and the Zhuge family being allied through marriage. The Holy Ji Palace is behind this as well, trying to bring forth a saint with the two allied forces. Beiteng Xing'er then added, but really what does that have to do with second sister? Just why do they need to put all that pressure on her? What second sister is doing is not just trying to force third brother to show up, but she is also forcing herself by putting her fate on the line. Chapter 656. Yi Futian was rendered speechless hearing what Beiteng Xing'er just said. His second sister was indeed putting her own fate on the line. Yi Futian was rendered speechless hearing what Beiteng Xing'er just said. His second sister was indeed putting her own fate on the line. Sister Xing'er, if third brother really ends up not showing, is second sister really just going to get engaged to Bai Luli? Yi Futian asked. If third brother doesn't show, what reason would second sister have to refuse? Beiteng Xing'er sighed. There was a 1,000-year-old tree in the moon tower's forests. Zhuge Mingyue sat on top of it, looking at the bright moon in the air with her beautiful eyes. Back in the days when we were in the cottage, he once said while standing on a tree, he would come to the Zhuge family. But where is now? The moon was high in the air. The sky got darker as the hours passed. There was no joy of reunion in the moon tower, only faint sorrow. Servant girls escorted Yi Futian and Hua Jieyu to their quarters after dinner. However, Hua Jieyu ended up coming to Yi Futian's room regardless. What's wrong? Yi Futian touched the hair on her forehead after seeing sadness in Hua Jieyu's beautiful eyes. He then said, everything will be fine. I want to spend the night in your place, Hua Jieyu said gently. Huh. Yi Futian blinked his eyes in puzzlement. If you're unwilling, I'll just leave. Hua Jieyu looked at him and said. How would I do such a thing? Yi Futian said as he took her hand. No naughty attempts, Hua Jieyu added. Well, I'm an honest person. Yi Futian then asked. What are the naughty attempts you are talking about? Hua Jieyu smiled at Yi Futian and walked to the side of his bed. She then took off her outer garments and shoes before burying herself under the sheets. Yi Futian's eyes sparkled. Happiness could not have come in a more surprising manner. It seemed that Jieyu knew that he was in a rather bad mood and had come to console him. What a girlfriend indeed. Yi Futian burrowed himself between the sheets as fast as he could. Hua Jieyu had her back facing him, and he went to hold her from behind. He felt warmth welling up in his heart as he cuddled her soft body. Hua Jieyu turned around gently to bury herself between Yi Futian's arms. Yi Futian seemed to have felt what Hua Jieyu was feeling at the moment. He went to circle one of his arms around her neck while the other remained circled around her body, holding her close. Jieyu, what happened? Yi Futian asked gently. I'm feeling rather sad. Hua Jieyu's voice sounded rather dejected. Having experienced matters with fourth brother and second sister in such quick succession, she felt rather puzzled as to why she was feeling especially down that day. Second sister was like an older biological sister to her. She was able to relate to what second sister was going through, but she felt frustrated about it nonetheless. It's okay. Everything will turn out fine. Yi Futian did not try to do anything dirty. He just continued to hold his girl close. Will we get separated because of something happening in the future? Hua Jieyu asked gently. That's not going to happen. Do you still feel like running away from me? Yi Futian consoled her. But I have a bad feeling about things, Hua Jieyu said. Don't think too much about it. You're just in a bad mood, that's all. Don't forget that prophecy from Minister Zhua. You are my empress. Yi Futian kissed Hua Jieyu's forehead. Hua Jieyu's dark eyes looked at Yi Futian and she said, If you feel like doing anything, I'm all up for it. She blushed after saying the line, burying her head into Yi Futian's chest, feeling her cheeks red hot. Idiot, Yi Futian said, caressing her hair. I'm not going to do anything. I just want to hold my girl and keep her from having bad thoughts about things. Sleep. Yeah, Hua Jieyu answered gently. She fell asleep soon in Yi Futian's arms with a tranquil smile on her face. This feels good. The news of Bai Luli from White Cloud City and Zhuge Mingyue from Zhuge family getting engaged in a month shook all of Xuanwu City the very next day. And the news continued to spread like wildfire throughout the barren state. Mighty ones from the Holy Ji Palace and White Cloud City had been staying in Xuanwu City for quite a while. Both sides were very eager to establish an alliance through marriage. However, due to some unknown obstacles or just rumors having such an effect on things, both sides had yet to truly reach an agreement. Everyone looked forward to it. The news meant that the two top forces in the barren state would be entering an alliance through marriage. The city lord of White Cloud City, ranked 4th on Barren Sky ranking, and Zhuge Qingfeng, head of the Zhuge family and ranked 6th on Barren Sky ranking, both studied in the Holy Ji Palace. Both figures had been exceptionally mighty ones back in the day, and both of them shared amicable relations. Both of them were also extremely renowned throughout all of the barren state. At the moment, both of them were going to get together again, and it was given that the news attracted the attention of the world as countless people were looking forward to the wedding. All three forces, the Holy Ji Palace, White Cloud City, the Zhuge family, were into this. The event could turn out to be the grandest engagement ever held throughout all of the barren state. Forces throughout Xuanwu City came to Crouching Dragon Mountain to congratulate the Zhuge family as the news spread. The family's estate was in an uproar right from the early hours of the morning. That itself foreshadowed that the Zhuge family would become the focus of the entire barren state for months to come. Yi Futian woke up early and exercised for a bit by doing some martial arts techniques, feeling invigorated, power coursing throughout his entire body. Hua Jieyu woke up as well, watching Yi Futian practice silently from behind. Her face was in a tranquil smile. She had thought at times, if only they were able to spend their days living a quiet life, that would be beautiful. Yi Futian finished his routine. He turned around, saw Hua Jieyu watching him silently, and said to her gently, You're up. Yeah. Hua Jieyu nodded with a smile. I'd love to see you still asleep tomorrow morning, Yi Futian said. Hua Jieyu blinked and glared at Yi Futian. Don't think too much about it. Yi Futian's face pretty much collapsed at the comment. Happiness can't last long, eh? What a bummer. Should have done more last night. Yi Futian mumbled to himself. No use regretting. Hua Jieyu smiled. Both of them had the matter with second sister lingering in their minds throughout the night, but they nonetheless felt at ease about the whole deal. There was simply no use fretting over the matter. You two sure seem to be having quite a time. Zhuge Mingyue smiled as she walked in their direction. Second sister. Both Yi Futian and Hua Jieyu yelled. Yi Futian then added, we were just talking about the Zhuge family, and we realized we have yet to pay a proper visit to your father. When do you think it is most suitable for us to do so? The pressure on second sister's shoulders came from the Holy Ji Palace, White Cloud City, and the Zhuge family. The truth was, however, that other than her own attitude about the whole thing, it was the attitude of the Zhuge family being of the utmost importance. As such, Yi Futian deemed it necessary to pay a visit to the legendary figure ranked on the Baron Sky ranking, Zhuge Qingfeng. Yi Futian needed to know what he thought about the whole thing. Yi Futian also hoped that his third brother would come to the estate within a month from now. If he ended up not showing, he needed to prepare for the worst to come. There are many who will be coming from Xuanwu City to pay their respects. The family will arrange a banquet to welcome the influx of guests. Many of them will go pay a visit to my father in the meantime, and you are welcome to join, Zhuge Mingyue said. Very well. Yi Futian nodded without saying much. It seemed like his second sister still resented her father somewhat. Given the relationship between Yi Futian and Zhuge Mingyue, she would have arranged for another time for the visit otherwise. Her father, Zhuge Qingfeng, was, after all, a senior in the Holy Ji Palace. Getting them properly introduced to each other would do Yi Futian no harm at least. Of course, there was also the possibility that his second sister did not want to get involved much. Zhuge Mingyue knew what Yi Futian was like, and she knew he would not just let go of the matter so easily. Ms. Mingyue, a servant girl came said. Zhuge Mingyue turned to address her. What is the matter? Yushi, daughter of the city lord of Alchemy City, arrived with Shui Yi and Luofan, the servant girl reported. Both Shui Yi and Luofan visited the Zhuge family estate before, and many knew of them to be Zhuge Mingyue's juniors. The seniors are here. Yi Futian's eyes sparkled. Zhuge Mingyue said, send them in. Understood. The servant girl left. Zhuge Mingyue smiled and said, you're getting really worked up about things here. Second sister, you saw it back in Alchemy City yourself. Before fourth brother went to offer his life spirit, he reminded me to keep tabs on the matter between you and third brother. You know what fourth and fifth brother thought about it, didn't you? Yi Futian asked with a bitter smile. Zhuge Mingyue naturally knew what he meant. A group of people arrived shortly after. Other than Shui Yi and Luofan, Yushi, who was now Shui Ye's wife, arrived with a huge belly. As she was the daughter of the city lord, pregnant and out on a trip, it was a given to have mighty ones from Alchemy City serve as her escort. As such, the entourage was rather huge. Second sister. Shui Yi, Luofan and the rest walked towards Zhuge Mingyue. They departed from Alchemy City as soon as possible after catching wind of what happened. Zhuge Mingyue ignored both of them outright. Her eyes were on Yushi as she dragged her aside and said, Yushi, just what are you doing messing around with those two? Come sit down. Second sister, you went to Alchemy City showing concern for us, didn't you? Shui Yi and I can't just sit around doing nothing. We got here as soon as we heard the news, Yushi said gently. Zhuge Mingyue glared at Shui Yi. It's bad enough that you mess around. Yushi is pregnant, for goodness sake. Taking her somewhere so far while she is in such a state, are you trying to ask for a beating? Shui Yi was rendered speechless. He was just about to ask about the matter with her, and totally did not expect to get berated himself. Second sister, we're concerned for you and so is our sister-in-law. She insisted on coming here with him, Luofan explained. Did I ask you to speak? Zhuge Mingyue looked at Luofan. Luofan shut up right there and then. Yi Futian looked at what transpired with a beaming smile. Good days, just like how it was back in the cottage. If Big Brother and Third Brother show up, we'll have a proper reunion. Big Brother is in the Eastern Baron territory now. He'd probably rush here if he knew what happened, Yi Futian said. Such was the students of the cottage. If anything happened to one of them, all the others would rush to that person's aid as soon as they found out. I'll deal with this myself. It's bad enough that you came messing around here. Nobody is going to inform Big Brother about anything, you hear? Zhuge Mingyue said with all seriousness. Things were different now. Yi Futian ranked first on the law rank of the Holy Ji Palace, and he was the champion of all in the Noble Plain. He was also the son of Starry School. Shui Yi was the son-in-law of the city lord of Alchemy City. If they had wanted to get someone to send word to the Eastern Baron territory, they could have done so easily. Furthermore, there were sages right beside Shui Yi as they spoke. Chapter 657. Everyone in Moon Tower chatted away. Shui Yi and the rest knew what their second sister was like, and they had no words to say about her. What they hoped for at the moment was that their third brother was not too far away, that he was still near enough to catch wind of the news and come to the Zhuge family estate. There was still hope so long as he showed up before the day of the engagement. Everyone in Moon Tower chatted away. Shui Yi and the rest knew what their second sister was like, and they had no words to say about her. What they hoped for at the moment was that their third brother was not too far away, that he was still near enough to catch wind of the news and come to the Zhuge family estate. There was still hope so long as he showed up before the day of the engagement. On Crouching Dragon Mountain, many mighty ones from Xuanwu City and young students paid their visits to the Zhuge family, and the estate bustled with noise and excitement. The Zhuge family threw a banquet to welcome guests from all over the place. Someone came to inform Zhuge Mingyue and the rest of the cottage group, and they got moving. At the place where the banquet was held, things were indeed bustling. Many young proud sons and daughters arrived, but there were still quite a number of seats not taken at the front. Zhuge Mingyue's arrival attracted attention from all present guests. Congratulations, Ms. Mingyue. Many rose and cupped their hands to pay their respects to Zhuge Mingyue, and she was seen with a faint smile throughout the whole process. That smile she wore was different from the one she wore before Yi Futian and the rest of the group. At the moment it was one that made people feel distant. It was one put up solely for the sake of formalities. Are father and the rest not here yet? Zhuge Mingyue asked a servant girl beside her. The clan leader was discussing some important matters with some senior figures in the Wind residence. He should be here shortly. Right? Zhuge Mingyue nodded. Wait for me here, I'll go have a look. Will do. Yi Futian and the rest of the gang nodded. They found themselves seats while Zhuge Mingyue left the place. Many cast their gaze at Yi Futian's party. The other guests were able to tell that they were some exceptional people and some of great renown. Yi Futian ranked first on the law rank while Yu Sheng ranked second. Hua Jieyu was a divine spiritual sorcerer. Many discussed who would have ended up being the one to win her heart in the Zhuge family. Even Shui Yi and the rest were no ordinary folk. Many were able to guess their identities. They were the juniors of Zhuge Mingyue, Shui Yi and Luofan, who caused quite an uproar in Alchemy City several months ago. There was also Yu Shi, daughter of the city lord of Alchemy City. They were quite surprised to find her pregnant so soon. Yu Qi's daughter and son-in-law. Those were people whose statuses were not far behind Zhuge Mingyue's. Other than that, there was also Bai Zhe, the second son of White Cloud City, at the banquet. Some students and disciples of clans and forces in Xuanwu City smiled and cupped their hands at Yi Futian and his party. The top two figures of the law rank of the Holy Ji Palace were definitely renowned figures in their own right. Furthermore, the weight of the current top two far surpassed Shimin Hanjiang. It was said that Yi Futian was still currently a grade 3 noble and had very amicable relations with Zhuge Mingyue. People like that were deemed worthy of being friends with. However, no one was seen deliberately trying to be overly close and friendly with them, for they knew that they were not on good terms with Bai Zhe. Worse still, both parties resented each other very much, and the same could be said for Zhuge Xing. It was thought that many of the younger generations of the Zhuge family did not like them. We finally get to see Ms. Mingyue in person, and she's definitely as exceptional as she is rumored to be. It was said that Ms. Mingyue possessed an incredibly high talent in cultivation. Being able to see Ms. Mingyue becoming a couple with Bai Luli is indeed something envious to many, someone from one of the clans in Xuanwu City said with a smile. Indeed, the ceremony to be held in a month will probably be the grandest event to be held in the barren state in recent years. We won't see another couple so perfectly matched for one another in years to come. I've heard that Bai Luli possesses the potential to become a saint. He, after all, got to be ranked 10th on the barren sky ranking at such a young age. The rumors are probably true, and we'll probably be seeing the hope of a saint emerging from the barren state in him. Well, if that is the case, wouldn't there be a saint emerging from White Cloud City, and a son-in-law who is a saint for the Zhuge family then? Someone joked. Bai Luli and Zhuge Mingyue became the talk of everyone present, and things looked incredibly lively. Regardless of birth, looks or talents, Ms. Mingyue definitely has it all. Bai Luli seems like the only one for her in the entire barren state. The youths of the Zhuge family liked the marriage alliance very much. There was no one who was ignorant of Bai Luli's talents. He would soon become the Zhuge family's son-in-law, marking the alliance between White Cloud City and the Zhuge family. That, coupled with the Holy Ji Palace's relations with both forces, would have put them at the pinnacle of the barren state's social hierarchy. There was no one they could be dissatisfied with such a marriage alliance. Everyone looked forward to it. Indeed, many said in agreement. Indeed, my ass Luofan, who was drinking, cursed under his breath and slammed his cup on the table. He was in a very foul mood. He had not wanted to say much, but the chatter around him was practically stoking the fires of his suppressed rage. The only one suitable for his second sister was his third brother. Bai Luli had no place in all of this. Many turned their eyes at Luofan. It was obvious that this junior of Zhuge Mingyue felt rather displeased with the matter. The people of the Zhuge family frowned. While Yi Futian's party consisted of people of great renown, they were on the grounds of the Zhuge family, and it was not their place to be so insolent in front of anyone. The marriage alliance was bound to happen regardless of what they thought about it. Fifth brother, drink up, Yi Futian, who was right beside Luofan, said. Their cups touched, and Luofan gulped down everything in one go. His mood could not have been any fouler, yet second sister explicitly told them to stay out of these matters. Bai Zhe was also drinking in silence. Yu Sheng spared a glance at him, wanting to see how long he would be able to hold it in. Sounds were heard from quite a distance away, and many turned their eyes to where the sounds came from. Many figures were seen arriving, and all of them were great figures from all corners of the world. There were several who exuded imposing bearing. The middle-aged man at the center wore a simple robe, yet the humble appearance was unable to conceal his tremendously exceptional bearing. The man was the clan leader of the Zhuge family, Zhuge Qingfeng. Yi Futian recognized a figure at Zhuge Qingfeng's left. It was a great figure from the Holy Sage Pavilion in the Holy Ji Palace. There was another right behind him, and that person was none other than Bai Luli. Zhuge Canyang and Zhuge Mingyue followed right behind their father. There was yet another great figure at Zhuge Qingfeng's right, the biological younger brother of the city lord of White Cloud City, Bai Luli's uncle, Bai Yan. He too was a very powerful figure. The city lord himself had returned to White Cloud City to prepare for the event to be held a month later. Bai Luli was to return to the Holy Ji Palace later as well, and the matter would have been settled for the time being. All of them would leave right after the banquet. Everyone else in that group were leaders of Xuanwu City clans. They came to the front of the banquet, leaving themselves quite a distance away from the younger generation. The younger generation rose in response, paying their respects by cupping their hands before them. Young people truly are invigorating. Zhuge Qingfeng walked to his seat smiling, then said, "Please take your seats." Everyone then sat down. Zhuge Qingfeng scanned his guests at the banquet, finding Yi Futian, Shuiyi, and the rest of the party. He then addressed them, "So Jieyu has returned. It is quite unexpected to see Shuiyi bringing Yu Qi's daughter here. It's really something indeed. Mingyue, I assume the one right beside Jieyu would be Yi Futian?" Shuiyi and Luofan had visited the Zhuge family before, and as such Zhuge Qingfeng knew them. Indeed. Zhuge Mingyue nodded. Yi Futian and the rest of his gang stood and bowed. I, Yi Futian, am here today to pay my respects, Uncle Zhuge. Zhuge Xing and everyone glanced at Yi Futian. That fellow sure knows how to get familiar with people. Calling some elder he met for the first time uncle and whatnot. You and Jieyu are a couple, little brother of Mingyue. And you are from the Holy Ji Palace. It seems fitting that you address me as your uncle. Zhuge Qingfeng nodded with a smile. No one felt anything weird about it, as Yi Futian's identity and talents meant that he was not actually trying to reach for places out of his league by calling Zhuge Qingfeng his uncle. Thank you, uncle, Yi Futian said. Zhuge Qingfeng nodded and asked the mighty ones from the Holy Ji Palace beside him. I heard that kid became the champion of the law rank as a grade 3 noble, and that he was granted entry to the Sage Hall. Is that true? The mighty one from the Holy Sage Pavilion right beside him was named Zhu Song, a sage who enjoyed an esteemed status in the Holy Sage Pavilion. His face was a stern one even when he smiled. As such, it was not hard to tell that he was one who was both very hard on himself and others. Indeed, when that kid first came to the Battle Sage Palace to train, he was like Sage Dojan himself. Vastly superior combat capacity and all. The eldest brother summoned all 6 lords to discuss the matter and granted him permission to enter the Sage Hall. Everyone has high expectations for him, Zhu Song said as he nodded. Yi Futian's eyes sparkled. So the very reason I was permitted entry to the Sage Hall was due to the assistant palace lord summoning all 6 of the lords and discussing the matter. The elder of the Holy Sage Pavilion was indeed different from the likes of Bai Zhe and Zhuge Xing in that he did not discriminate against those from other palaces or pavilions. Shimin Hanjiang would not have been granted entry to the Sage Hall otherwise. Despite this, he still held the opinion that the Holy Sage Pavilion made the wrong decision with his second sister's case. I look forward to the growth of this generation. Zhuge Qingfeng smiled and said, have a seat. Yi Futian and the rest sat down. Many great figures turned their eyes at Bai Luli and Zhuge Mingyue. Some elders smiled and said, the more I look at them, the more I find them to be an ideal couple. Indeed, it has been quite a while since we've seen a couple so perfectly matched for each other in the barren state. Someone from the side said in agreement. Many opened their mouths to talk about the matter. The banquet that day was held to greet the mighty ones from Xuanwu City to congratulate them, and it was only natural that the topic of the day was Bai Luli and Zhuge Mingyue. Many in the barren state are looking forward to the wedding between my brother and Ms. Mingyue. However, someone in the Zhuge family claimed that my brother was ill-suited for Ms. Mingyue, Bai Zhe said plainly. Many frowned. Some elder from the Zhuge family asked, everyone from the Zhuge family is satisfied with the arrangement. Who dared speak such insolent words? Yi Futian saw Bai Zhe glaring at him from the corner of his eye. Zhu Song glanced at Bai Zhe. While it is true that this little brother of Bai Luli has exceptional talents, his temperament is nowhere near that of Bai Luli's. He has little hope of achieving great things. But then again, if Yi Futian did say such words, he was indeed being a little too stubborn. It is natural for the one who ranked first on the law rank to have great pride. However, everyone from the Zhuge family looks forward to the event. What he said was indeed hard on the ears, Zhuge Xing said in agreement. Bai Luli and Ms. Mingyue are practically a couple match made in heaven. It is unthinkable to see someone displeased about it. The Holy Ji Palace places a lot of importance on this person, yet he seems to be jealous of Bai Luli. Bai Zhe's words lit up the resentment of many. Many of the younger generation from the Zhuge family came forward to chastise Yi Futian. The air turned rather awkward as there was no hint of the joy and harmony found before. Bai Zhe lowered his head and continued drinking, looking at the ruckus he kicked up with a cold, smug look on his face. Despite Yi Futian's current prestigious status in the Holy Ji Palace, Bai Zhe still deemed Yi Futian unfit to doubt his brother, and intended to teach him a lesson. Yi Futian glanced at Bai Zhe with plain eyes and wore a sarcastic smirk on his face. If he is so hell-bent on being humiliated, I guess I'll just have to oblige him. Chapter 658. Zhuge Qingfeng, Zhu Song, and others turned at their eyes at Yi Futian. However, that was rather expected. as they knew Yi Futian did not like Bai Luli all that much. Zhuge Qingfeng, Zhu Song, and others turned at their eyes at Yi Futian. However, that was rather expected, as they knew Yi Futian did not like Bai Luli all that much. Yi Futian, did you really say such words? Zhu Song asked Yi Futian. Indeed. Yi Futian nodded. As the one who ranks first on the law rank of the current generation, the Holy Ji Palace has great hopes for you. Your plane is still low and you know little of the outside world. Bai Luli, Hua Fan, and you were 3 champions of the law rank of 3 different generations, and you will all train in the Sage Hall, shouldering and creating your own era in the future. Bai Luli is several years older than you and as such, he can be said to be your elder brother. While you both have not been on good terms, he would not fuss about such matters. You should put your energy on your training from here on out and cast your personal opinions aside, Zhu Song said to Yi Futian. Sage Zhu Song could not have spoken better. Bai Luli is now ranked 10th on the Barren Sky ranking at such a young age. How is he not fit? You're both geniuses and you shouldn't be holding grudges like that, someone from the side added with a smile. I beg your pardon. Yi Futian stood, bowing to Sage Zhu Song and said, my training is still lacking and there are certain matters which I do not quite understand. I would like you and Uncle Zhuge to give me some guidance on the matter. Feel free to sit and speak, Zhuge Qingfeng said with a nod. He knew Yi Futian was displeased about the matter, but there was hardly anything that could not be uttered at this point. While there were some kinks to be ironed out in the marriage arrangement between Bai Luli and Zhuge Mingyue, it was undeniable that from various perspectives, they were still a match made in heaven. Thank you, uncle. Yi Futian sat down and elaborated, I do not know Bai Luli well, and as such I do not have much of an impression of him. However, I do know that he is not as inept as his younger brother. I'm displeased because of the matter between my second sister and third brother. Bai Zhe glared at Yi Futian coldly. That bastard sure remembers to take jabs at me while he is talking about other stuff. Yi Futian turned his eyes at Bai Luli and asked, what do you think about my second sister? Bai Luli's expression composed as he returned Yi Futian's gaze before looking at Zhuge Mingyue. He said casually, Mingyue has exceptional looks and extraordinary talent. Her personality also proves to have more grace than mine. I have no complaints and I like her very much. You have good eyes, but my second sister doesn't like you, Yi Futian said boldly. Shay. Everyone present was rendered speechless. Even Zhuge Mingyue glared at Yi Futian. That kid really isn't going to just let things slide. However, she did nothing to stop him. Yi Futian turned his eyes at Bai Zhe, Zhuge Xing, and the rest sitting in the same place. Why do you all think they make a good match? My brother hails from White Cloud City and is training in the Holy Ji Palace. Ms. Mingyue hails from the Zhuge family, possessing extraordinary looks and talents. Why would they not make a good match? Bai Zhe retorted. Bai Luli ranked 10th on the Barren Sky ranking. His father knows the Zhuge family leader well, and everyone in the Barren State is looking forward to them tying the knot. If that doesn't make a good match, what would? Please, you're being too reserved. Yi Futian continued. Allow me to elaborate why you all deem them to be a match made in heaven. White Cloud City and the Zhuge family make perfect allies as both are formidable forces. Furthermore, Bai Luli has his desires, and the marriage not only fulfill his desires but also gets him a beautiful wife. At the same time, while the people of the Zhuge family think that having Ms. Mingyue marry someone ranked 10th on the Barren Sky ranking is a bit of a sacrifice, it still gives them an exceptional son-in-law. As such, they are also satisfied with the arrangement. So, there you have it, the match made in heaven that you speak of. Everyone was practically staring at Yi Futian. While his words were rather explicit, they made sense. What he said was indeed the core of the arrangement. Everyone thinks the marriage alliance is a heavenly arrangement, as everyone weighs nothing but benefits and interests. What both sides have to gain from this. You are all thinking what White Cloud City gets out of this, what Zhuge family gets out of that. But, who among you have spared any thought for what my second sister thinks? Yi Futian continued as he scanned the people he was addressing. My second sister fell in love with my third brother back in the Eastern Barren territory, even challenged Bai Luli. While he ended up losing the battle, his intentions were clear. Why are you all so eager to overlook that? If you all know this yet deliberately ignore such a matter, what is this marriage alliance for? Yi Futian smirked. Gains nothing else, and they are calling it a match made in heaven. I do not know why one such marriage alliance sounds so beautiful to all of you. Please, elders, I ask for your guidance on the matter, Yi Futian said as he bowed. Shui Yi and Luofan looked at the people around them. What their little brother had said was indeed what they intended to express, but they knew fully well they sorely lacked their little brother's eloquence. I never pushed for this to happen. If Mingyue is unwilling, then the arrangement can be stopped, Bai Luli said, looking at Yi Futian. Is that so? Yi Futian smirked and said, if that indeed is all right, if this all can be stopped with my second sister saying no to it all, would you all just leave silently? The weight of the Holy Ji Palace and White Cloud City was obvious. It was obvious what the Zhuge family went through when both forces joined hands to propose this matter. All pressure would have fallen on Zhuge Mingyue. You have gone a little too far. Elders from the Zhuge family turned their eyes at Yi Futian. One of them said, while you're Mingyue's junior and a student of the Holy Ji Palace, don't you think what you said is a little too narrow-sighted? Mingyue is the treasure of our family, and how could we not be happy for her? But at the same time, isn't Bai Luli the best suitor there is for her? What you have just said was simply from the standpoint of your third brother. The one who said so was Zhuge Xing's father and Zhuge Mingyue's uncle. My father has put this aptly. While Yi Futian's words sounded reasonable, they were shallow. He and his third brother were simply thinking about nothing but taking Ms. Mingyue away for their selfish gains. Ridiculous indeed, Zhuge Xing said. Bai Luli ranked 10th on the Barren Sky ranking, and possesses the potential for sainthood. Is there anyone who is more suitable than he is? Is your third brother suitable for her? The youths of the Zhuge family rose in an uproar. Yi Futian's words before were seen as a slight towards them, accusing them of selling Zhuge Mingyue for their family's benefit. Many more in the banquet rose to criticize Yi Futian, making him look like some witch on a burning stake. Ridiculous. Bai Zhe smirked sarcastically. He liked what he was seeing. Yi Futian was not only offending the Zhuge family, but also the Holy Ji Palace at the very moment. There was no way Bai Zhe would not have liked what was happening. Zhuge Qingfeng watched what transpired in silence. Yi Futian saw everyone pointing fingers at him. He, however, seemed unfazed, lowering his head to drink a cup of wine. When he raised his head again, his eyes looked as sharp as knives before he said coldly, I beg your pardon for my bold words, but is every single member of the renowned clans here a bunch of good-for-nothing idiots? The banquet turned utterly silent as Yi Futian's words came out of his mouth. The youths of the Zhuge family all looked at Yi Futian with cold eyes. What insolence! While you're indeed a student of the Holy Ji Palace, it'd be best you take back what you just said, someone from the Zhuge family said coldly. As a member of the Zhuge family, you wish to increase the influence of your family through a marriage alliance instead of through your own hard work and training. Don't you feel ashamed of yourself? Yi Futian continued his sarcastic jabs. And furthermore, you actually put it in such a way that made it seem my second sister would benefit the most from this. Just because the Zhuge family might actually have a saint as their son-in-law, you all wish to kneel and lick boots? Where is the bearing and pride that you should have as a member of such an esteemed family? Can't you train yourself to be strong enough to make the Zhuge family greater? If you see no way of achieving further greatness but to rely on such an arrangement, would I be wrong to call you a good-for-nothing? Yi Futian, are you insulting the entire Zhuge family? Bai Zhe's voice was cold, as if he was ready to pick a fight. Bai Zhe, are you actually thick-skinned enough to talk to me here? Yi Futian said to Bai Zhe with cold eyes. You. Bai Zhe's face went pale. During the law battles you practically had eyes at the top of your head. Your pride was second to none, yet you proved to be utterly helpless. I crushed you without even having to use my full power. In the sparring sessions later, one move was all it took from Yu Shang to put you down. Were you not embarrassed enough of yourself after all that? Yi Futian elaborated coldly. You asked for it and you got it. I only wished to drink in silence today, yet you insisted on provoking me and kicking up a fuss. Do you really think no one knows what is going on inside your head? You know yourself that you are weak, so weak that you don't have what it takes to fight me straight up. and so you resort to such underhanded tactics. Yi Futian glared at Bai Zhe as he blasted away. If some nobody like you wasn't born in a high place in White Cloud City, you would be little more than a piece of filth. And now, you dare go about talking like you own the place just because your brother is somebody. Do you know that you're little more than a clown in the eyes of others? Shut up, Bai Zhe said coldly. Oh, you're getting angry now? Why did you insist on getting yourself embarrassed in the first place? Yi Futian continued. You're all smiles and feeling good about yourself when the wedding is mentioned. You talked as if it was my second sister who went sucking up to your brother to set up this arrangement. Don't tell me you never thought it to be such. Think about it. Who was the one who made the proposal in the first place? If your brother was such an exceptional figure, why would he have needed to borrow the Zhuge family's power? Yi Futian, enough, Sage Zhusong from Holy Sage Pavilion said. Yi Futian stood up. He bowed to Sage Zhusong and said, Sir, I have talked about this with my teacher before. I know that the Holy Ji Palace is not doing this for its own benefit, but so that there will be a saint to emerge from the barren state. But I still do not think this is the right way to do so. Bai Luli possesses the potential to become a saint. Why would he need to borrow external powers to achieve that? If he is the hope of the Holy Ji Palace and one everyone has high hopes for, he should have enough confidence and pride to be able to accomplish the feat with his own power. If he is a figure expected by many to achieve great things, he should have the confidence and resilience to do so himself. Why resort to such trivial measures? Yi Futian said as he looked at Sage Zhusong. It has been years since the barren state last saw a saint emerge. It is not as simple as you think it, Sage Zhusong said to Yi Futian. He began to sound rather serious, indicating that he rather irritated. There has not been a saint in barren state for many years, but our generation from the Holy Ji Palace will make it happen. If Bai Luli can't do it, then I will. There is no need to resort to such tricks. Yi Futian looked straight into Sage Zhusong's eyes as he spoke. An air of extraordinary excellence exuded from him. It was the air of absolute pride and confidence in oneself. It was due precisely to such confidence and pride that he mocked the members of the Zhuge family as a bunch of good-for-nothing idiots. Sage Zhusong gazed at Yi Futian and said, If you have such confidence, I'm willing to believe you. But what you should be doing now is focusing on your training. When you become a grade 1 noble and step foot into Sage Hall, breaking into the Sage Plane, then you will know that the wedding to be held between Bai Luli and Zhuge Mingyue is not for selfish gains, but for the barren state as whole. You should be open to the matter, not trying to ruin this arrangement because of the relationship between you and your third brother. It was apparent that Yi Futian's words were unable to convince Sage Zhusong. The wedding must go on. Everyone agreed to it. There were no loops to jump over, everything was in place, and no attempts to ruin it would be tolerated. Yi Futian looked at Sage Zhusong. He knew he was unable to convince the sage, but he said, I stick to my viewpoint. I'm not a saint nor a sage, and I don't have the bearing of a saint or a sage. If I can ignore those who are closest to me, I have no place talking about greater love for the barren state. As such, I'm only a common folk. Whatever the elders think about this, it doesn't change the fact that I care about my second sister and third brother.